Okay, so can you all please confirm if I'm audible to all of you all clearly and if the screen is visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So welcome to the second day of the training session. I hope most of you all must have received the link to access the recording of yesterday's session. Uh, I have noted that some of you have joined the session without completing the basic training certification. Maybe you got the link from your colleagues and you have joined the session. Please note, we do not consider your attendance in the training session unless and until you complete your basic training certification. So you will receive the recordings, you will receive the assignment only after you get certified for the basic training, and you have to attend the advanced training only after that. Okay, so if you all have any concerns or any questions regarding this, please drop me an email and I'll respond back to you on this email. For the rest of y'all, if you have not received the recording of yesterday's session, just drop me emails and I'll share the recordings with all of you. So let's get started with today's session. Today we are going to start off with the PII redaction part, where we are going to talk about two types of redaction: user input redaction and redaction in the response received from the service calls. Then we will move on to custom dashboard configurations, how to use public APIs, how to enable the webhook channel and use the webhook channel. Then we will look into the Web SDK and the BotKit SDK, an overview of both of those things. Then an overview of the admin console. And towards the end of the session, I will show you all the advanced training that you can do on the knowledge graph engine for qualification of FAQs and how to use the core voice gateway in the virtual assistant that you are building. So these will be the topics that we will cover in today's session. So let's get started with the first topic of the day, that is the redaction of the sensitive data. Now, why do we need that? There can be a lot of conversations where you are asking for information which can be identified as personally identifiable information. That is, using that information you can identify a particular user. And typically, if I'm an user, I would not like to share information like my email ID, my phone number, my credit card number, my bank account number, my social security number, all of these with people whom I don't know. But while the conversations are in progress, okay, if the bot is asking for an information like that, you have to provide that because that information is required to complete the conversation. But going ahead, when developers are monitoring these conversations in the analytics, if they can see your personally identifiable information, then it can be a security risk. Okay, so while the conversation is on, it is asking me to enter my mail ID. So let's say I put in my mail ID over here. And as long as I am in the conversation, I can see my mail ID, that is fine. The issue is that the security issue arises is when developers are monitoring these conversations in the analytics. So if you go to NLP Insights, and when you click on a particular conversation, you can see the details of that conversation. And in the details of the conversation, the developers can see all the inputs that the users have provided. Okay, so you can see here, you can see the mail ID of the end user. So this can be an issue, and it's always good to redact this kind of information. The rest of the conversation is fine. What type of card you are applying for, what was the final message that was presented, but wherever these personally identifiable information is present, these should be redacted. So how do we apply redaction on information like this, which is captured from the users while the conversation is in progress? So for that purpose, we'll come to the settings, app settings, and under advanced settings, you get the PII settings section. Okay. Now here you can see there are a few system-defined redactions, like email, phone number, social security number, credit card number. And if you have any entity that matches with any these type of information, you can use the system-defined redaction to redact the end user's input. How do you use it? By default, it is disabled actually. So you have to enable it first. And once it is enabled, depending on the type of information you would like to redact, enable that specific redaction. Okay, so I'm enabling the email redaction over here. But remember one thing, just enabling the redaction is not enough. Because once you enable a redaction, going ahead, NLP will try to redact every user input. Now, every user response will not be an email. So the bot can ask for account number, it can ask for the type of card, it can ask for opening balance, it can ask for the name of the account holder and so on. So everything that the user is responding with is not an email. So if you clearly don't specify on which entity to apply this redaction, you will see going ahead whenever your virtual assistant is asking for an input and the user responds back, if it does not match with the format of an email, it will again ask for the input. So it goes into, it doesn't accept the value from the user. And that is because NLP is trying to apply the redaction that you have enabled on every response that is coming from the user. So that is not what we want. We want to apply it on a specific entity. So once you enable a redaction, click on it, and here you can see the configuration of that redaction. First is the information type, which is just a name of the redaction, followed by the regular expression, which will be used to validate the response of the user, which will be redacted. And this is why if you don't say on which entity it will be applied, all user responses will not match with this regular expression, which will lead the virtual assistant to reprompt the user for the input. So very clearly define over here on which entity you would like to apply the redaction. So if you scroll down here, I have an entity called user email, which I have defined in the apply card entity. Okay, sorry, apply card task. So I'm selecting that particular entity because this redaction has to be applied for all user inputs for this particular entity. And now coming to the type of redaction. What kind of, how do you want to display the redacted value? One is the redaction, which is the actual user input will be redacted with system generated values. Or what you can do is you can go in for replacement where you can define the text of your choice, which will be used for redaction, or you can mask with a few characters from left and right. Okay, so the two supported masks are this, and you can say how many characters from left will be redacted and how many characters from right will be redacted. I'm just going in for the system generated redaction, and let's click on save over here. So what I did was I enabled redaction. I selected the type of information that will be redacted, and within the configuration of that redaction, I have defined on which entity the redaction will be applied. Now, once that is done, let us go ahead and have the conversation. Redaction will be applied only after it is enabled. So if chat history is enabled for your conversation window, this is of course a channel related configuration, whether you want to enable chat history or not. But on a given channel, if chat history is enabled, and if you are applying redaction at a later point of time, your previous conversation will not show you the redacted value. It will show you the original value that was entered. But now if I try this task once again, so I type in my email ID over here, you can see redaction has been applied. So as soon as the entity value is identified, NLP engine will apply the redaction. So redaction is applied as soon as the input is captured from the user. And you can see in the following message node, where I'm displaying the email ID back to the user, you can see the redacted value over here. So redaction is applied immediately. Now this may not be what you want. Typically, while the conversation is on, we would like to see the original values. We want redaction in two places. One is if chat history is enabled. So if I close my conversation window and I open it once again, and provided chat history is enabled for that particular channel, I would like to see redacted values for the sensitive information that I have captured from the user. And the other place where I would like to see the redaction is in the analytics when the developers are monitoring the conversations from NLP Insights. So this is where I want the redaction so that developers don't get to see those personally identifiable information about the end users. So let us see here where the redaction has been applied. So here redaction is working. But what we saw was redaction as it is applied immediately on the entity in the conversation while it is in progress. In following message nodes and all, if you are using the same entity, you get to see the redacted value and not the original value. Clear till here?
Yeah, fine, Jayanti. Like in this chatbot is fine, but if you are consuming some backend services, how this
I'm
value
coming
going
to,
to be?
wait,
Okay.
I'm going to come to that step by step. Okay. Okay, so now the first thing is how do we ensure that as long as the conversation is in progress, we get to see the original value and not the redacted value. So for that, what we will do is we will come back to the configuration of that particular entity on which we have applied the redaction. Okay, so it is the user email entity which I have defined within the apply card task. And here you can see the type of the entity is email. Okay, if you scroll down here, you can see redaction of PII data. And you can see de-identify PII data while presenting it to the user. That means as soon as the input is captured from the user, going ahead in the conversation, if you're using the same entity anywhere, maybe in a message node or a confirmation node or a service call, wherever you're using, the redacted information will be used and not the original information. But what I want to do over here is I want to use the original value as long as the conversation is in progress. Okay, that is as long as the conversation session is active. In the chat window, I want to see the original values. Redaction should be applied only on the chat history. Okay, and in the analytics reports when the developers are monitoring these conversations. So now I select this use original value of PII data while presenting it to the user. So now once you do that, let us go ahead and see whether it is presenting the original value or not. So one second. So we select the type of card, and once again, I'm typing in my email ID. So in the following message node, I can see the original value now, though here if you see, you can see the redaction had been applied. But since I had selected that option that use the original values while presenting it to the user, in the active conversation window, that is while your session is active, you will get to see the original value presented to the user. But if you close the conversation window and if chat history is enabled for that particular channel, you will see the redacted value coming up. Okay, so here you can see the redacted value. In the same way, in the analytics section, you will get to see the redacted value. Clear till here? Okay. Now here we were using a system-defined redaction because we have a supported redaction out of the box for email type of information that is captured from the user. But I have a task over here which I have been using frequently, that is the check bank balance task. And this particular task is asking the user for the account number. Now, bank account numbers are typically information that we don't like to share with anybody. But for this task to continue, we need to provide the account number. And if we do not apply redaction on this particular entity, the developers can also see the account number the user has provided. So how do we apply redaction on entities which are not available in the list of system-defined redaction? So we are going to create our own redaction over here. Okay, so how do we do that? We will come back to the redaction section, advanced settings and PII settings, and I'm going to add a new redaction over here. Okay, give a name to the redaction, any name, okay, and your regular expression which will validate the user response that will be redacted. So I'm putting something like this, that is, it supports digits. Minimum number of digits required is 4, maximum is 10, and the entity on which I would like to apply this particular redaction. So if there are multiple entities, maybe the names of the entities are different, but they are actually account numbers that you're prompting the user for. You can select all those entities over here on which this redaction will be applied. And how would you like to present the redacted value? You can select the display type over here. Now, once that is done, let us go ahead and check what is happening in the conversation.
Can I have a question, please, here?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So is this functionality is support with different languages? So
Yeah,
let's say
yeah.
if I
It
use a
is.
German language.
It is on an entity. Entities are applicable across all languages because when you're enabling languages, you're not changing the configuration of a dialog task. Only thing that you are changing over there are the prompts and responses. So if you are applying redaction on an entity, it is applicable across all the languages that you are enabling. Okay.
Okay. So okay.
So now you can see the redacted value coming up over here for confirmation, just like the last time. So we have to ensure that while the confirmation message is presented, the original account number is presented to the user instead of the redacted value. So what we will do here is, like the previous time, we will go back to the configuration of this dialog. We will go to the entity on which we have applied the redaction, and we will make sure that we use the original value in the conversation and not the redacted value. So once you come down here, you can see use original value while presenting it to the user. So once that is done, let us go ahead and test. So let's put in the account number. And as I have said, use original value. You can see here in the confirmation message, we are getting to see the original account number coming up. Okay. Now, once we confirm this account number, this will be used for a service call. And I have been using this account number since yesterday. Okay, and we were getting to see information for account number 1001. So I have this account number, okay, and the service call should return the information for this particular account number. And it was working yesterday because repeatedly I had used the same account number. But today, once I apply the redaction, you can see that my service call has failed. So if you come here, if you see the response that was returned by the service call, you will see the response was a failure. That is, it is not a 200 response. You are getting a 404 response coming up. Okay. So what happened due to which my service call failed? And the reason behind it is, if you are applying reduction on an entity, and if that entity is used in a service call configuration, by default, the redacted information is shared with the external application. So of course, your service call will fail because if we are trying to fetch account information using the redacted account number, you do not get the correct information coming back. We need to pass the original account number, not the redacted account number, to get information for that particular account holder. So by default, if you are applying redaction on a particular entity, and if that entity is used in a service node, maybe as a query parameter or path parameter, or if it is a post API call, maybe in the request body you are using entities on which you have applied redaction, then the redacted value will be shared with the external service. To make sure that you use the original values and not redacted values of the entities which you have defined in your service call, what you have to do is come to the advanced settings of that particular service node, okay? And here you say use original values of PII and digital form data while making the service call. So instead of using the redacted value, we say use the original values. So once you do this, okay, and you save this particular configuration, let us see whether the service call is returning the required information or not. So you can see redaction has been applied. Okay, but since we have said use the original value, so the original value is used in the confirmation message. Now, if I confirm this particular account number, let us see whether the service call is working as expected or not. And this time you can see the balance has been fetched successfully and it is presented to the user. Okay, so few key things to remember over here, and there were two very good questions that were asked. First, there was a question, what happens if we are using these entities in service call? Make sure you go to the advanced settings of that service node and select that use the original values instead of the redacted value. The second is redaction is applied immediately. So if you are using the entity in any message or prompts or service nodes going ahead, particularly in the messages and the prompts in that particular dialog task, you want to display the original value and not the redacted value from the settings of that particular entity on which you have applied the redaction. Make sure you say use original values in the conversation instead of the redacted value. And there was a question right now that what happens, is this available in all the languages? A good question. Yes, it is available because your task configuration will remain the same across all the languages. So entities are not specific to a particular language. Okay, the configuration of the dialog task will remain the same. What changes are the prompts and the responses only. Okay, so if you are applying redaction on an entity, typically the component properties of the entity, only the prompts and the error prompts will change. But the type of the entity, the name of the entity, these redaction properties of the entity, all of these will remain same across all the languages that you are enabling. Clear till here? Okay. Now, this is one part of the redaction. Okay, so now if I go back to the analytics section in the NLP Insights, if I go and check the conversations that has taken place, if I look into the details of the conversation where I can see the chat history, you will see the information is redacted over here. Okay, so the account numbers are redacted. So this is a huge, huge impact on the security part, because bank account numbers and all should be redacted. Now you can say, why is this not redacted? Here I have displayed the response from the service call. I have not used the entity value. I'll show you how to redact this. Okay, so till here, is it clear to you all? Okay. But there's another part of the redaction also. That is, in the task execution logs, we have the API call log. Okay. And here, the developers can see the responses that were generated by the API calls, okay, while the conversations were taking place. Now, this is something very important because developers need to look into the responses that were generated. Let me just see whether. So here you can see the developers can see the responses that were generated. Now, this report is very important for developers because when dialog tasks are initiated by the end users, developers need to monitor whether the API calls are working as expected or not, whether it is returning the required response to the end user. But the disadvantage over here is, in this particular response, we get quite a few information which is good enough to identify a particular customer of the bank. Something like the ID of the customer, the account number of the customer, and the name of the customer. These three details are good enough to identify a specific customer of the particular bank. Along with that, you can see the type of account and balance also. So you have the entire account related details exposed to the developers who are monitoring these API calls. And this can be a huge security risk because we would not like to share our customer ID, the account number, the name of the account holder. These things should not be displayed as it is. We must apply some redaction over here. The rest of it, account type and balance, you can show it. As long as these values are redacted, a developer cannot identify a specific account holder of that particular bank. So what we are talking about now is redaction to be applied on the responses that are generated by the service calls so that developers don't get to see the actual information. They can see whether the service call was successful or not. They can see those information on which you have not applied redaction. But the personally identifiable information should be redacted in the service call responses as well. Clear till here what I'm saying? Okay. Now, how do we do that? So we will come back to the dialog task configuration and we will go to the service node where this particular service call has been configured. Okay. Now here, if you scroll down, you get PII reduction for API responses. By default, it is disabled. We are going to enable this. Now, once it is enabled, we need to add the response data path on which you will be applying the redaction. So I want to apply redaction on three sections of the response. That is on the ID, the customer number, and the account number and the name of the account holder. These are the three information in the API response on which I would like to apply the redaction. How do I do it? Now, my response body is always in the array format. So the way I define it is, we will say body dot dollar dot the name of the column in the response on which you would like to apply the redaction. This dollar is not required if your response body is not in the array format. Okay, I'm going to add another path over here where I will say body. Okay, so that is the second column in the response on which I'm applying the redaction. And the third one is on the name I would like to apply it. So body dot dollar dot the name of the column in the response, that is account name. So in this way, you can define all the data path on which you would like to apply redaction. And make sure before you click on add to add one more path over here, you press enter to save each of these redactions, okay, that you have defined. And now come to the display type, where I'm going to just apply this particular redaction, okay, the general redaction, but you all can try out with the other ones as well. Now, once you have defined this, let us go ahead and check it out. Let us see whether the response is getting redacted or not. Okay. Now, the response that you will get to see is something like this. The balance in your account, okay, followed by the account number, which is redacted, is $12,000. Now, why is this account number redacted? Because I'm displaying the account number from the response of the service call. So if you look into the response of the service call by clicking on this, you can see all of these three information has been redacted because I applied redaction over here. So since the information is redacted, when I'm presenting this particular account number in the message node, you are getting to see the redacted value coming up and not the original value. Clear till here how it is working? Okay. Now, if I would like to, of course, here while the conversation is on, I would like to see my actual account number. Okay, I don't want to see something like this, the balance in your account followed by the redacted value. Okay, so what we will do is similar to the entity nodes, in the service node also, when you are applying redaction, you can say use original values in the conversation. Okay, so use original values of PII data when presenting it to the user. Okay, otherwise the redaction is applied as soon as the API response is received. Okay, and you get to see the redacted values in the following message nodes or wherever you have used these API responses. Clear till here? Okay, and
So what's the difference that if I use reduction and I still see the original value?
you are seeing the original value because you are the user. Okay, think of the end user who is having a conversation. Okay, end user, while they are having the conversation, they see their account number, it is fine. If I am the account number, I am the end user, while I'm having the conversation, I get to see my own account number that I have provided. It is okay. But the issue is when the developers are monitoring these logs, the analytics logs. Before we applied the redaction, the developers were able to see all our account related information, like I was showing you. Okay, all the account related information was available to them. But once you apply redaction, you will see when the developers are looking into the API calls, they are checking up the responses that were generated by the API calls, they will get to see the redacted values and not the original values. So this is where actually we need the redaction. Okay, so that the developers don't get to see this personally identifiable information. In my chat window, I am the end user. While having a conversation, I am seeing the values that I have provided. It is perfectly fine. Okay.
Mhm.
I close my conversation window, those information is lost. If I don't have chat history enabled, of course, the information will be lost. If I have chat history enabled, we will get to see the redacted value and not the original value. But in the analytics where the developers are monitoring, if you are applying redaction on entities or you are applying redaction on responses generated by the service calls, they will always, the developers will always get the redacted value and not the original value. Clear?
So what is the recommended one in this case?
Recommended is you should always go in for redaction like this, okay? Because if you have sensitive information which can identify a particular end user, like their social security number, okay, or maybe their credit card numbers, okay, your conversation needs that information to complete that particular task. While the conversation is in progress, the end user provides the social security number and the conversation takes place, that is fine. But when developers are looking into the NLP insights and all, they should not get access to the end users' social security number, bank account number, credit card number. Okay, that is not a good experience. Okay, so there, if you are capturing that kind of an input from the end user, make sure you apply redaction on those inputs of the users. Okay, that is always recommended in the conversations. Clear?
So I have a small question, Jayanti.
Yeah.
So you told that chart history will be once we enable PII redaction, chart history won't be there. So I want to see my last any appointment details or any last kind of things. It will pop up the last details.
Chat history, what you are getting to see here depends on whether on the channel side you have enabled chat history or not. Here, actually, in the developer window, we get to see the chat history because that is a default configuration. This is for the developers only. But when you connect as an end user, okay, using the web URL that is provided, you will see the chat history is not displayed to you. Okay, so by default, chat history is disabled. When you are enabling a channel, it is a channel side configuration, not from our platform. So even on the web channel, if you want to enable chat history, then you have to use the web SDK, which we will discuss in today's session, where I will show you in the SDK files where to enable the chat history. And by default, chat history is disabled. Okay. So, and going with your question, if you want to see your previous appointment details and all, of course, looking into the chat history is not a good experience. You should have a task which will ask you for some detail, fetch your appointment details and display it back to you. Okay, that is a better option to do. So you should have a dialog task which asks the user for maybe the date or something like that, makes a service call to fetch the required information and presenting it back to the user.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Jayanti.
Any other questions on this?
Yes, I'm looking in the app. There is a sensitive entity. So what is the difference between sensitive entity feature and using reduction?
What entity feature? Sorry, I didn't get you.
Yeah, before the reduction, there's a feature named sensitive entity.
Sensitive entity. Yeah, sensitive entity means it is also a kind of a redaction, but there the redaction is defined only for that particular entity. When you are doing it from the PII settings section, there if multiple entities are capturing same kind of an input, which can be validated by that particular regular expression, then you can select all of those entities and apply the redaction in one go. So when you apply redaction only on a specific entity, then you can do it from the sensitive information section of that particular entity as well. But let's say today in check bank balance, I have account number. In transfer funds, I have account ID. Somewhere else, I have some other entity name, which is also the account number, maybe payee account number. Okay, but that is also an account number which will have a similar kind of a configuration. Okay, it is a numeric input, 4 to 10 digits and all, but the name of the entity is different. So instead of going to each entity applying the reduction separately, what you can do is from the app settings section, from advanced settings, you define your reduction over here, okay, and you select all of those entities whose response can be validated using this particular regular expression. So you don't have to do it again and again for different entities which are capturing same type of an input. That is the advantage that we have. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So it's recommended to use this way
Yes.
if there is any like account number, like mobile number. So which as I can see, only we have this. We can define any new variable, right? We can add the new any new PPI. I mean, let's say like tax number. Let's say we can edit this one, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
okay, okay,
Yeah. You can do that. Okay. Any other
okay.
question? Yeah. Any other question? Okay. So I'll just disable this now as of now. So that is how you do redaction, and you can do both types of redaction, user input redaction and redaction on API responses also. Both of it is important. Okay, so when you are designing your conversations, when you are in the requirement gather, analysis state and all, you must consider these kind of configurations. Okay. Okay, the next configuration that we will talk about is the custom dashboard. Currently, we were just now in the analytics and we have a lot of dashboards available over here. Each of these dashboards will show you different types of information that is captured from the conversations that are taking place between the virtual assistant and the end user. But the challenge over here is today, if you want to add some new information within this dashboard, is that allowed? No, it is not allowed. So today here in the overview dashboard, today you can see a lot of information coming up. Let me just increase the date range here. So you can see a conversation dashboard is there, user dashboard is there, performance dashboard is there, and each of this dashboard will show you some related information. Okay, like conversation dashboard will show you how many conversations were completed, how many drop-offs were there. If there are agent transfers from the conversations, it will show you the count of agent transfers. User dashboard will show you the total number of users who have connected to the virtual assistant within this particular time frame, whether they are new users or whether they are returning users. Okay, the number of messages exchanged between the virtual assistant and the end user, and the performance dashboard will show you the NLP performance. That is how many utterances led to the qualification of intent, how many times there was a failure. If a dialog task was qualified, whether the user completed the dialog task or there was a failure. If API calls were made, whether there was a success in the execution of the API call or there was a failure, and similar information for the script node execution. But if you want to add new information within these dashboards, so let's say in the conversation dashboard itself, I want to add the number of users, or in the performance dashboard over here, okay, I want the number of times intent qualification worked, the number of times intent qualification failed, the number of time a dialog task was completed, the number of times there was a failure in the dialog task. I just want that information. I don't want this API execution success rate. I don't want the script execution success rate. Can I do those customizations on the predefined dashboards that are available in analytics? No, we cannot do that. The maximum we can do is we can apply these filters, and typically the filters are related to the date range, and some additional filters are available depending on the dashboard that you are seeing. But like yesterday, there was a question. when we were going in for the sentiment analysis. And through a negative sentiment, I was initiating the raise issue task. Now, there was a good question. How do I track this? A very easy way to track it is, since whenever the user is saying disgusted or the user is not satisfied or things like that, I am qualifying the raise issue task to ask the user what is the issue that the user is facing, something like that. So now in the dashboard, if I can count within a date range how many times the raise issue task was qualified, I can understand that how many times the users expressed a negative sentiment. So these kind of custom information in the analytics is not available in the dashboards which are predefined. But developers might need to do that. Okay, then what do you do over there? You can go in for the custom dashboards where you can define your own widgets within the dashboard, and each widget, depending on the query that you have defined, will fetch information from the internal analytics data sets and present it in the UI of your virtual assistant configuration. So how do we do the custom dashboard configuration? We will go to custom dashboard over here and we will create our first dashboard. So let's click on create dashboard and let's give a name to that dashboard. This name is totally up to you. Click on proceed. Now each dashboard can contain up till 100 widgets inside it. Maximum of 100 widgets can be defined. So we are going to create a few widgets to see the steps which are involved in creation of a widget. So we are going to click on add new to define the widget. There are 4 steps in over here. Okay, so first is we define the query which will fetch the required information from the internal analytics database. These analytics databases are not available to the developers directly. So there are a few fields that are exposed to the developers to define their custom dashboard queries. You have to refer to the documentation to understand what are the fields which are available to the developers. Okay, I'll show you all the documentation and I'll be sharing all of these links in tomorrow's mail. The second is, once you define the query, you trigger the query for a date range over here and see whether the query is returning correct response or not. Now, once you review the data that is generated through the query for this particular date range, now you start configuring the widget. And when you're configuring the widget, we have a few templates supported over here. Select the template as per your choice and define the information that will be presented within this particular widget. Now, once you do that, click on preview to see whether the information is getting presented correctly using the template that you have selected. And once you see the information is presented correctly, you add the widget within your dashboard. So these are the 4 steps to define widgets within your custom dashboard. And custom dashboards is a very common requirement for developers. So now going ahead, there will be a few configurations that we will discuss, which are for the developers only, because these analytics reports and all are not used by the end users. End users will have conversations to complete their tasks. They are requesting for tasks and they want the tasks to be completed. But it is the developers or the stakeholders or maybe your team members or the leadership of the organization who would like to understand the performance of your virtual assistant. And this is where, in addition to the default dashboards which are available, developers can create their own dashboards and define widgets within those dashboards to present these analytics information. Clear till here? Okay. Now to define the query, there are 3 data sets which are exposed to the developers. The 3 data sets are analytics data set, messages data set, and the sessions data set. Analytics data set is the NLP performance related information. Messages dataset will contain information related to the messages that are exchanged between the virtual assistant and the end user. Sessions dataset will contain information about the overall sessions that are taking place between the virtual assistant, conversation sessions that are taking place between the virtual assistant and the end user. Now, very important for you as a developer is to know what are the SIMs that are available, what fields are available in each of these data sets. And for that, you need to go to our documentation. Okay, so I'll just quickly go to the documentation, open that particular page, which will give you the details of all the fields which are exposed to the developers from where they can design their custom dashboards. Okay, so we'll come to the analytics section. Okay, so these are the three data sets that I was talking about. And under analytics data set, you can see these are the fields, and these can be the possible values within the field. So whenever you're creating a widget query, you need to first identify those fields which will give you the required information. So let's say the first widget that I'm going to create is, in a single widget, I'm going to present within a given date range how many times user utterance qualified an intent, how many times there was a failure in intent qualification, how many times a dialog task was completed by the user, how many times there was a failure in completion of the dialog task, and how many times the response of the user did not match with the expectation of the virtual assistant. That is, typically entity retries have taken place. Okay. Now that information you can see within the analytics data set is available in the metric type field, because here it will tell you whether the task was completed successfully, whether the user utterance led to the qualification of an intent successfully, or there was a failure in task completion, failure in intent qualification, or the response of the user did not match with the expectation of the virtual assistant. So this particular page in the documentation is very important whenever you are doing your custom dashboard configuration, because it will give you the details of the fields and the possible values which will be stored internally within those fields, and you can identify which field to use in your query. Similarly, if you go to the messages data set, you will see all of these are related to the messages that are exchanged between the virtual assistant and the end user. And the sessions data set will give you information about the overall conversation session that is taking place between the user and the virtual assistant. Now, once you go through this document, you know the fields to be used. We are going to come back over here and we are going to define our query. It's very similar to SQL queries over here. So I'm using the analytics data set. Let us set up the preview date range over here. Okay. Now I'm going to define my query. So I'm using the metric type field. Okay. And remember, these widgets can show you aggregate information. It cannot show you which utterance led to qualification of which intent. If you want details like that, NLP Insights is the only report that will help you. These are cumulative count. How many times intent qualification worked? How many times intent qualification failed? So that cumulative count can be presented in these widgets. So I'm going in for the metric type column, and on the metric type column, I'm going to apply the count function. So how did I come to that? I added the column on which I want to apply this aggregate function. You click on this down arrow key, it will show you the list of aggregate functions. Select the one that you would like to use. Okay. Now, since you are using an aggregate function, your group by parameter or clause becomes mandatory. Okay, so we are going to group the rows on the basis of the similar metric type, and within each group, we are going to apply the count function. Clear till here? Okay. By default, the queries of the widgets of the custom dashboard only consider end user interactions. That is the conversations that took place after deployment of your virtual assistant with the end users. Now, that should be the actual scenario, because you should not be concerned about the developer interactions that is happening with the test button. But as I have very little end user interaction, okay, after deployment, I want to include the developer interaction so that I get a reasonable count coming up. So what I will do is, in the filter by clause, how do you know about the field which I'm going to use over here? If you come to the analytics section, that analytics data set, you can see here we have a field called is developer. And by default, is developer is exclude. Developer interactions are not included when you are executing the queries of your custom dashboard. The reason why I'm including it is, I'm repeating myself, why I'm including it is because I have very little end user interaction. Okay, so that is why I want to present a decent count over here. So in the filter by clause, I select the is developer field, and here clicking on the down arrow key, you get all the operator. I click on equals to, and here I say include. The possible values for this field, you will get it from the documentation. Default is exclude. I'm including the developer's interaction. But in real-time scenarios, you should not include the developer's interaction. You should always concentrate only on the end-user interactions. Clear till here? Okay. Let us first run this query. Okay. And the mandatory, these things are the select clause and the group by. The rest of it is optional. As per your requirement, you can add those clauses. Having clause is required. You can define a filter if your filtering condition is on this aggregate column. That is, if the count is more than 10, then only it should be presented in this particular report. So the filter that you are applying on the response that will be generated is on the aggregate column. So there you cannot define the filter using the filter by clause. You have to define the filter on the using the having clause. And sort by is if you would like to sort this particular response. Okay, like let's say I want to sort it on the basis of the metric type and I want it in the alphabetical order. So I say ascending order. Okay. Now, once you apply that, make sure you run the query once again and see whether the data is getting generated for this particular preview date range that you have provided. And once you get to see the data generated, if there is any error, it will come up with the error. But once the data is generated, okay, now what we can do is we can present this information using a template which is available within the widget configuration. Clear till here? Okay. Now, selection of the template for the widget is very important. I've observed many developers do not understand this. Why I'm saying it? Now, if I select pivot chart actually expects 3 inputs. That is what will be presented in the columns. Okay, as a column header, what will be a row header, and at the intersection of the row and the column, what is the actual value that will be presented. Here in the output of this particular query, you have only 2 columns. So selection of your template is very important because many of the templates expect 3 inputs. Like your bar chart, the line charts, okay? All of these expect 3 inputs. What is at the x-axis, what is at the y-axis, and at the intersection of the x-axis and y-axis, what is the value that will be presented. So when you have 2 columns in the output of your query, the templates that are best suited over here is the pie chart template or the donut chart template. So select your template correctly so that you get to see the information presented in a proper way. I'm going in for the pie chart over here. Okay, give a name to this. Okay, description is optional. You can add a description, the purpose of this particular widget. And now in the dimensions, I'm selecting metric type. Metrics is each slice of the pie chart, what information it will present. And of course, metrics is the count. Okay. Now, once you select the dimension and the metrics, click on preview to see whether this information that was generated for this particular date range, whether it is presented correctly using this particular template that you have selected. Okay, so here you can see the information presented correctly using this particular template. Now what I will do is I will add this widget into the dashboard. Okay, so my first widget is added in my dashboard. Remember, custom dashboard widgets will never show you static data. It will run the query, the internal query associated with this particular widget for this particular date range. Okay, and the default date range is the last 24 hours. And you can select your date range as per your requirement. And once you select the date range and click on apply, the internal query will be triggered once again. Information will be fetched from the internal analytics databases, and that information will be presented using the widget that you have defined. Okay, so today I create a custom dashboard. Tomorrow I come back to my custom dashboard. As soon as I open this dashboard, the queries will be triggered internally for the last 24 hours. And whatever conversation information is picked up from the analytics for the last 24 hours, that will be presented in the widgets that are defined within this particular dashboard. Clear till here? You can export this information in CSV or JSON format. And we also have API support to fetch the information that is presented within the widgets of the custom dashboard. Okay, clear? Okay, I'm going to create 2 more widgets just to repeat the process once again. This time again, I'll use the analytics data set, but I'll be adding more information, let's say similar kind of a query. But I'm going to present this information more in detail. That is date-wise, I want to see how many times intent qualification worked, intent qualification failed, and so on. So I'm adding the date column over here, the metric type column. And on the metric type, I'm doing the count. Okay. Now, since there are 2 columns involved over here, I'm going to first group the data on the basis of the similar date, on the basis of the same date. The outer group will be created. And then within each group, I'm going to create a subgroup of the metric type. So for a given date, all the rows where intent qualification worked will be put together. And on that particular subgroup, the count function will be applied. Okay, so this is how you build up your queries. And I'm going to include the developer interactions once again, because I do not have much of end user interactions. And I'm going to sort on the basis of the date column. So in the sort by, I'm going to select the date column. And let's say the recent date should come on the top. So I'm going to sort it in the descending order of date. Okay. Select the order. I'm going to select the descending order. Now, once you have specified all of these things, let's go and execute the query. Never go in for designing the widget without executing the query. Okay, so once you define the query for this preview date range that we have selected over here, execute the query, see whether it is returning the required information or not. And once you get to see the information presented to you, you can see date-wise the information is presented to me. Now I will go in for designing the widget. So this time, since I have 3 columns in my response, I'm selecting the pivot chart. And in the columns, let's say I want the date, okay. In the metrics, that is the intersection of the row and the column, of course, the count should come up, and the overlay, the row header should be the metric type. Now, once you're done with that, click on preview, and this particular information that was fetched for the preview date range, you can see it is presented over here in the pivot chart. And once you get to see the data, okay, you can add the widget into your custom dashboard. So in this way, you can use different data sets, okay, analytics or messages or the session data set to define your widgets and widget queries. And once you see the queries are returning information, you select the template that you want for your widget, select the required data to be presented within the widget from the query response. And then what you do is you add the widget within your dashboard. And a particular dashboard can contain a max of 100 widgets like this. And if you want, you can create a new dashboard as well. So you can have different dashboards for different types of information. So these are the custom dashboards that you are creating in addition to the system-defined dashboards that are available to monitor the performance of your virtual assistant. Clear till here? Any questions on this configuration? Okay. The next configuration, like I said right now, okay, like one way of exporting the data, because many a time when you're discussing the performance of your virtual assistant with your team and you want to discuss ways to improve that experience, all your team members may not have access to, the virtual assistant, that is the EXO platform and all. So you want to export this data in the CSV format or JSON format and share it with your team members and all. Okay, so one way is you will have the export option within the UI of Automation AI from where you can do it. Other way is for most of the tasks that we can do within Automation AI, we have supporting APIs as well. Now, how do you use these APIs? So you can import, export app configurations using APIs. You can enable languages, disable languages, change the default language. You can do the batch testing. You can do the NLP training. You can import, export ML utterances. You can import, export FAQs, trigger the training of the KG engine, and all the other tasks that we have been discussing. For each of it, we have supporting APIs as well. So only creation of dialog task is something for which we do not have APIs. But for the rest of it, we do have APIs. If you want, like from a particular dialog task, okay, now let's say you have a dialog task. Dialog task is capturing some information. Okay, like let's say today you have a dialog task called Open New Account. Okay, and where the user is selecting the type of account. Okay, now you want a custom dashboard widget to present. Okay, how many times users are selecting a savings account? How many times users are selecting a checking account? Okay, so in those kind of situations, what you can do is from within your dialog task, you can generate tags which will be added within your analytics data sets, and you can use those tags when you are configuring the widgets of your custom dashboards. So while conversations are taking place, if there are information that is captured from the users in the conversation, and those information should be used in building the widgets of your custom dashboard. By default, we don't have the information for the account types and all available within the analytics section. So what you have to do over here is, after you capture the account type, through a script node, you can populate this into the analytics section using a tag. And this tag can be a message level tag or a session level tag or an user level tag. Message level tag is for every conversation that is taking place, that particular tag will be generated. Session level is for an entire conversation session, the tag will be generated once. User level level tag is if it is an enterprise user, then only once, the first time the user connects to the virtual assistant, the tag will be generated in the analytics section. Now, once you generate that particular tag, okay, you can use that tag in the queries of your custom dashboard. Okay, so that is the purpose of these tags, and you can refer to our documentation to see how these tags can be used. Okay, if you are interested in knowing more about the tags, let me know. I'll share the documentation with you.
Just one question on the delivery. So, I assume I am building one feedback survey also, and I want to see who are the users who is giving like, dislike, or some comment on the dislike, right? So, can we see the chat history also in the custom dashboard?
Custom dashboard will not show you chat history. Chat history is associated with individual user utterances, right? Chat history kind of detail will come only in the NLP insights. None of the other dashboards will actually show you the chat history. For the feedback dashboard, for the feedbacks that you are capturing, you always have the feedback dashboard available. Okay. So let me just, I'm not sure what is the survey that I had here. So feedback dashboard is always available. So you can see the feedbacks, okay, that were submitted by the user for a given date range. And in the feedback dashboard, you have a section called the user level feedback, where you get to see the details of the user who submitted the feedback and what kind of a score, okay, what was the feedback that they have given. And if the feedback fell below a particular level on which the follow-up question was presented, the comment that the user has provided, you can see it over here. Okay, so here is the comment. If you would like to download this, you can download the CSV file. And again, you can take up this core user ID or the session ID and use it within your NLP insights to filter out that particular conversation for this particular session ID, and then look into the chat history. Chat history is only available in the NLP insights. None of the other dashboards will show you the chat history. Custom dashboard is cumulative output, never the details, which utterance qualified, which intent, after intent qualification, how the conversation took place. All of these are available only in the NLP insights section. Clear?
Okay, so based on their maybe the ID, the session ID or the channel ID, I need to go to that NLP.
Yes, NLP insights, you can filter it out over there and look into the chat history. Okay, but you can see also the comment over here. Okay, so it shows you the comment that the user has submitted. Okay, and you can work on that comment. You can download this entire report in the CSV format to discuss it with your team. Okay.
And the channel ID or the user ID that we see here, right? That is not, it is not easy to identify, right? So can we configure that user ID? Most of the time I see this is the auto-generated value.
This is auto-generated. This is generated by the platform. So you cannot configure this user ID and all. If it is a registered user, that is, it is an enterprise user whose end user information is available within the platform, you will get to see the name of the user coming up. Okay, that works. But otherwise, typically for end users, you will get an channel ID like this coming up, which is generated whenever the end user connects. All of these that you are getting to see is my developer interactions that I have had. And since I'm a developer, my information is available within the platform. So that is why my email ID is available. But otherwise, after deployment, you are a consumer. Okay, you are this is a consumer bot that you have. So anybody can connect and have a conversation with this particular virtual assistant. So whenever an end user is connecting, an ID is generated by the platform itself. Unless and until end user information is available with the platform and the audience of your virtual assistant is enterprise type. So that you can change it before you deploy the virtual assistant the first time. So if you come to the app profile over here, you can see the target audience. This cannot be changed after you deploy the virtual assistant the first time. Typically, we have general public. That is, anybody can connect to the virtual assistant and can have a conversation. But if you say enterprise users, it means the end user information has to be available within the platform. And the second thing is, after the deployment of the virtual assistant, the admin of the platform has to assign this virtual assistant to the end users, has to give access of the virtual assistant to the end users. Otherwise, the virtual assistant is not accessible by anybody. Okay, and it is only for enterprise users. When you go to the analytics section in NLP Insights and all, you can see the detail of that particular user, maybe the email ID of the user or the name of the user. Typically, the email ID is used. You can see the individual email IDs. Okay, but
Got it.
for general public, it's a random, that is a system generated value that you will get to see. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So now coming to what I was discussing, the APIs that are available. Okay, so these are very developer-centric discussions, okay, not involving the end-user conversations and all, but these are configurations that are very commonly required by the developers. Like today, you get to see a lot of analytics information within the UI of the virtual assistant, okay, within UI of automation AI. But you might like to extract this information and add it in your organization's, analytics and all, so that you have a centralized database where all the analytics is available. Now, one way is you come over here at a regular interval, you export this information and you can import it in your organization system. The other way around is you enable APIs from the virtual assistant and use these APIs in your external application to fetch the required information. So we are going to see how to enable APIs and how to use these APIs externally. I'm going to use Postman over here for demonstration on how to use the APIs, but these APIs can be used in any external application of your choice. Okay. So the first thing that we have to do is we need to enable the APIs that we will be using. Now, how do you understand what API you are going to use, what APIs are supported? It's very important to know what are the APIs that are available. We will look into the analytics, we'll come to integrations and APIs over here. And in this section, you get API reference where you have the API list. We are looking into the API support for automation AI. So just click on that. You will get to see the list of APIs, and here you will see, if you go through the list, you will see like other than creation of a dialog task, for most of the tasks that we are doing within the configuration of our virtual assistant, from the UI of the automation AI product, we have supporting APIs for that as well, like enabling language, disabling language, changing the default language. Okay, you can see importing, exporting app configuration. In the same way, if you go down publishing your bot configuration, then doing the batch testing, you have APIs for NLP training like ML utterance import, ML utterance export, triggering the training of the ML engine. Same way for the KG section also. Then analytics related APIs where you can extract information from the feedback analytics, the feedback dashboard that I was showing you all, fetching information from your custom dashboards. Okay, you will get APIs over here. That is get dashboard widget data. This is for your custom dashboards. Get analytics, that is get the metrics from the other analytics dashboards which are available. Same way, if you want to pick up, extract your LLM usage details, okay, which is available over here. The usage logs of GenAI. Okay, so if you want to see that, if you want to extract this particular information that you are getting, so you can do it over here using this particular API. So we have a lot of API support. So before you start using an API, just come into this documentation, look into the list of APIs to identify the one that you will be using. I'm going to demonstrate using this change logs API, where I'm going to extract all the changes that were performed in the configuration of the virtual assistant. Okay, so let us see how to configure this particular API, how to enable this API and use this API externally. Clear till here? Okay. So for enabling the API, we will come to the settings over here, app settings, and let's go to the dev tools. Here you have API scopes. Click on API scopes. And we are going to define a scope over here through which we will enable the required APIs. Now, when you are enabling an API and that particular API will be used externally, the API call needs to be authenticated. And the authentication is done using JWT or JSON Web Tokens. To generate that JWT, you will need a client ID and secret. So what we will do is we will create a JWT app over here within this API configuration, which will give us a client ID and secret. And we are going to use that client ID and secret to generate the JWT, which will be used to authenticate the API that we are enabling from the platform side. Clear till here? Okay, I'm going to create a JWT app, give a name to your app. Okay, this name is totally up to you. Okay, so let's say so just give a reasonable name over here, whatever name you want. And the signing algorithm, which will give you the client ID and secret, is HS256. Okay, so make sure you use HS256 and click on next after that. So you give a name to your JWT app and you select the signing algorithm and click on done. So you can see the client ID secret generated along with the app ID. This is the unique ID of the virtual assistant or the automation app, AI app that you are building. Click on done once you have all the details. Now, along with this particular client ID and secret that is generated, we are going to enable the APIs. Which API? I want to demonstrate with the changelog APIs, but you can enable as many APIs as you want. That is the scope. Okay, API scope, you can enable as many as you want. So what I will do here is automation log history. Okay, this is the one that I will enable. Now, like I said, you can enable more than one API scope with a given client ID and secret. So the same JWT will be used to authenticate all of these API calls from an external application. But if you want different JWTs, then you have to define separate scopes, and within each scope, you select a separate API. Okay, whichever way you want to do. So now my scope has been defined. If you go back over here, you can see here, just give me a second. This is a UI problem that I face at times. Okay. Let me just publish it once. Okay, now once you have set up your API scope like this, the next thing that you have to do is, since the API will be used externally, you cannot use the API unless and until you publish your app configurations. So after enabling the API scope, we will go ahead and we will deploy this particular virtual assistant. Okay, click on proceed. Let's see. And now, after the deployment is complete, the first thing before we use the API is that we have to generate the JWT for using that particular API. You can use any JWT generator of your choice. What I'm going to use over here is an in-house tool that we have, which is provided by Core. I'm sharing the link of this tool, but if you have any other JWT generator, you can use that as well. Okay, so there's an online service also, jwt.io. If you want, you can use jwt.io as well. I refresh my screen so that I can see all that client ID and secret, because there is a UI problem in my instance, which does not show me, it only shows me the client secret, but not the client ID. We'll just wait for the configuration to be loaded, and then we will continue. Okay, so here you have all the details that will be required for your API configuration. That is how tokens are impacted for generating APIs. Which tokens are you talking about? The free tokens, the
Yes.
LLM tokens? No, these are not
Yes.
impacted by these APIs. These APIs are our platform APIs, nothing to do with the GenAI capabilities where you are using LLM integrations and all. Okay, these are APIs that are supported by our platform. Okay, so no token usage. Okay,
Thank you.
okay. So now coming here, so you can see all the required information that will be needed for you to do this particular integration. It's a very good question. Let me just clarify it once again. There's one integration that you are doing with external applications using API calls. That can be from the service nodes, okay? That can be integrations with your organization's, applications like Jira, Zendex and all. You can enable those kind of integrations, and you can use those integrations within your dialog tasks, which will be used to run that particular conversation. You can do integrations with LLM engines, okay, using your access keys and all. And if you are using the GenAI capabilities and you are consuming the free tokens, which we provide the free tokens with integration with Azure OpenAI. So as you are using the GenAI capabilities, those free tokens will be consumed. But this is other way around. This is we are enabling APIs from our end, okay, from your automation AI app. You are enabling APIs, and these APIs will be used by external application. Just like in a service node today, I'm using an API to connect to an external application to fetch information. In the same way, from the automation AI app, I'm enabling an API, and this API will be used in an external application to fetch information regarding the configuration or to make some changes in the configuration of my app from an external application. Okay, so here we are not using any GenAI capabilities and all, which will result in consumption of those free tokens. Those free tokens are used only when you are using the GenAI features like automatic generation of dialog task or training utterance suggestion or batch testing, use cases suggestions, things like that. Here we are enabling APIs, we are using it externally. There are no charges involved over here. Clear till here? But this is an important configuration. You will come across these kind of things, particularly fetching the analytics information. Your organization might say that we have our own system to monitor the performance. So at a regular interval, we want to fetch this information and add it within our application. So there you have to enable the API, and at a regular interval, make an API call to fetch this information and add it into your own internal systems. So this is a very common requirement for the developers. Okay, now coming back over here. First thing, before I can use the API is to generate the JWT. So I'll copy this client ID from here. The JWT can be generated using the client ID and the client secret. So I copy the client ID. We'll come back here to the JWT generator. And here in the payload, we will specify the client ID as app ID. Okay, it's very case sensitive. So app ID, I in capitals. Okay, followed by the client ID that you have copied. Sorry. 1 second. Okay. So the payload for generating the JWT to authenticate the APIs that are enabled is the client ID, and the key value pair is app ID followed by the client ID. Now in the verify signature section, you have to provide the client secret. So come back here, copy the client secret, okay, and put it over here. So with the combination of the client ID and the client secret, what you get over here is the JWT, which will be used to authenticate that particular API call. So today, if you are enabling the API from your automation app, and there are some other developers who are going to use these APIs externally, make sure that you provide all of these details to your other developers, because they will need these 4 information in order to make the API calls, where the client ID and the client secret will be required to make generate the JWT, and in the API configuration, you will need the name of your app and the ID of your app. So these information should be available with the developers who are doing the external configuration using the APIs. Clear till here? Okay. Now I'm going to make this API call from Postman, but before that I need the API. This is not the API. It doesn't look like an API endpoint. So from where do I get the API? When you click on this, you will come to the documentation page where you will get to see the actual API endpoint and the method that should be used with this particular API. This method is very important. Why I'm stressing on this is most of the time when working on the assignment, I see participants coming up with the problem that my API configuration is not working. It is showing method not supported. And the reason behind it is maybe the method supported for the API that you're trying is the post method, but what is selected in Postman by default is get, and you have forgotten to change the method. So make sure you look into the documentation, see the method that is supported, and select the method correctly. And this is where you get the API endpoint. So you can copy this and you can use it externally. Now, your API is not complete. You need to put 2 information over here. One is the host, that is the URL of the server where your XO11 platform is available. How do you get that? You can see here platform.co.ai. So if you have your in-house deployed instance of XO11, pick up the server address URL from here. Okay, so for us by default, it is platform.co.ai. So I'm going to use that in place of host. Okay, next is the ID of the bot. What is the ID of the bot? The app ID. Okay, so copy this app ID from here and you replace it over here. Okay, so that completes my API. Now, if you look into the documentation, you can see if any API is there where you need to specify some path parameters and all, you will get descriptions of all the path parameters in the documentation. What is the expected value? Like examples will be provided to you. You can pick it up from there and you get the curl request also. So you can directly use the curl request from your prompts and all. Okay. And here you can see you have to specify the JWT for authenticating this particular API in the header section. And the key value pair is auth followed by the JWT access token. So in Postman, what we will do is we will come to the header section. Okay. Here my key is auth. Okay. And the JWT that was generated. We will just copy that. Okay, and we will put it over here. In the value section, we will put that particular JWT. So this is how you configure your API. Okay, that is your API. Select the method. If there are additional path parameters required, you can also define those path parameters. It will be discussed in the documentation itself. Go through the documentation page. Okay, the authentication has to be done using the JWT, always in the headers section, and the key value pair is auth followed by the JWT that was generated. And I want the response coming up in the JSON format. So I just change it to JSON over here. Let's click on send to trigger this particular API call. And you will see if it is successful, you get a 200 response because this is a get call. So success code is 200. And in the JSON format, you get to see the change logs of this particular virtual assistant. So whatever changes I have done in date wise, it is displayed over here. So in the JSON format, you're getting to see the response coming up. So just like we make an API call from a service node, we get the response in the JSON format. We use that particular response, okay, to drive the conversation. In the same way, from an external application, we are making an API call. We are seeing the response, and now you can use the response in your external application as per your requirement. You can also use this API in some other virtual assistant. So from one virtual assistant, you enable an API, and then in another virtual assistant, you want to use that API to fetch some information from this virtual assistant. You can do that also using a service node. Okay, so APIs will allow you to connect to the configuration of a particular virtual assistant from an external application, fetch the required information as a response of that API call, and then you can use that particular response as per your requirement. Clear till here? Any questions on this? Okay, so quickly a recap of the steps. The first is you enable the API scope. For that, you have to create a JWT app, which will give you the client ID and secret. Along with that, you associate the APIs that you would like to deploy. Now, once the API scope is defined, make sure you deploy or publish your virtual assistant configuration because APIs will be used externally. So without publishing, the API call will fail. After publishing, generate the JWT using the client ID and secret. You can use any JWT generator of your choice. And once you have the JWT, the fourth step is in any external application which allows you to make an API call and see the response of that API call, configure the API. When you're configuring the API, the URL of the host, URL of the server where your XO11 platform is running, that is required. The ID of the app from where the API is enabled, that is required. And for many API calls, you will also need the name of that particular app. So you can get the app name from here itself. This is the name of your app. So just select that. If an API needs that, you can provide this information as well. Clear till here? Okay. The next configuration that we will look into is the webhook channel configuration. Again, a very common requirement for the developers, because today, when we are talking about deployment of a virtual assistant can be deployed only on the channels that are supported. So if you come to the digital channels, you can see a lot of channels are there. But today, your organization might have its own in-house messaging application, and you want to connect to the virtual assistant from that particular application. The application is not available as a channel on our platform. Then what do you do? In that case, you can use the webhook channel integration. Once you enable the webhook channel, it will give you an URL through which you can connect to the virtual assistant from any external application and have a conversation as an end user. Okay, so let us see how we can enable the webhook channel and how we can use the URL that is generated by the webhook channel externally to connect as an end user and have a conversation. Once again, I'm going to use Postman over here. Okay, but Postman, you can see, is not available as a channel. So I want to connect to this particular virtual assistant from Postman and have a conversation as an end user. How do I do that? So we will come to the webhook channel over here, click on it, and you can follow the instructions, but I'm directly going to the configuration and we will do the configuration of the channel. Now, this is one channel which can have multiple instances within your virtual assistant. What do I mean by that? Today, if you're enabling the, let's say the WhatsApp channel, okay, or the Skype channel, okay, or any other channel, or the Facebook Messenger channel, you can enable the channel only once for your virtual assistant. You cannot have multiple instances of the WhatsApp channel in the same virtual assistant. That is not allowed. But since the webhook channel will give you an URL which will allow any other application to connect to the virtual assistant and end users can talk as an end user, and there can be multiple applications like that which is not available as a channel, you don't want to reuse the same URL everywhere. So webhook channel is one channel which can have multiple instances within your virtual assistant. Each webhook channel instance will give you an URL which you can use externally to connect to the virtual assistant as an end user. So for every instance of the webhook channel, you have to give a name to that instance. This is only one channel which can have multiple instances, okay, within a given virtual assistant. Clear till here? Okay. Now, once again, the webhook channel call will be qualified using a JWT. Actually, if you are enabling any channel, you will see authentication for connection to a deployed virtual assistant is always done using JWT, and you will need a client ID and secret. So if you have enabled any other channel, you will see client ID and secret is required everywhere. So here also we will need the client ID and secret. So I'm going to create a JWT app, give a name to it. And once again, my JWT signing algorithm will be HS256. Okay. So as soon as you do that, you get to see all the details coming up over here. We will need the client ID and secret. And now the integration mode. Do you want to go in for a synchronous integration or asynchronous integration? Synchronous integration means the request comes from a particular application. The response of the virtual assistant is delivered in the same application. That is to say, I'm sending the user utterance or input from Postman. The response of my virtual assistant is delivered in Postman. Then it is a synchronous mode of integration. Asynchronous mode means the request comes from one application, but the response of the virtual assistant has to be delivered in some other application. Then we go in for a asynchronous mode of integration. And when you select this, you have to put the URL of the application where the bot responses will be delivered. And if accessing that particular application needs an access token, you have to provide the access token over here. We will look into the synchronous mode, but we do support the asynchronous integration with the webhook channel. And once you have provided that, let's click on save to save this particular channel. Okay. So now if you come to the configured section, you can see the webhook channel has been enabled. But we did not see any URL, right? So if you click on it, once it is enabled, if you click on the webhook channel, come back to configurations, here you will get to see the URLs are generated. Okay, always go in for version 2. Version 1 is still there because some of our old implementations are still using the version 1 APIs for the webhook channel. But as you are doing new integrations, always go in for version 2 API. But this API can be used only after deployment because this is a channel deployment. So it cannot, you cannot use this connection externally unless and until you have deployed your virtual assistant. Clear till here? Okay. So quickly we will go ahead and we will publish the configuration once again. And once it is complete, okay, once the publishing is complete, we will go ahead and do the webhook integration from Postman. So that is your external application integration. But before doing that integration, we need to generate the JWT for authentication. So let's go back to the channel because I'll need that client ID and secret. Okay, so let's copy the client ID from here. We will come back here. So now app ID will be the client ID. And here an additional parameter is required, which is called the subparameter. So you can put any dummy value, numeric dummy value for the subparameter. The value of the parameter is not very important, but this parameter is mandatory for the payload of the webhook channel JWT generation. Okay, so app ID is your client ID, followed by the subparameter, which can be any random number or ID of your some internal ID of your app or something like that. Okay, but it's not very essential what you define as the sub value. Coming to the signature part, I'll copy the client secret over here and we will go back and put it here. So with this combination, this is the JWT that I have, and this JWT will be used to authenticate that particular webhook call. Clear till here? Okay. Now we'll come back to Postman. And webhook call is always a post API call. Okay, so your method to be used is post over here. From where do you get the URL? You get it from the channel configuration itself. Copy this version 2 URL and use it in your external application. And again, any external application, just because I'm using Postman, there's no rule that you have to use Postman. You can use this API. It's actually an API. In any external application, you can use this API to connect to the virtual assistant as an end user. That application should have the capability of sending API request and seeing the response of the API within that particular interface. That is all the requirement that you have. But we don't need to provide the instance of the server where XO11 platform is available because that is taken care of by the channel configuration itself. Even the ID of the bot is provided over here. So now how do we specify the authentication? We will come back to the headers section. This time, instead of auth, we will say authorization. Okay, sorry. Not proxy authorization, but authorization. Okay, and it's a bearer token. So you prefix the word bearer. Okay, and then you copy this JWT and put it over here. Okay, so this is how you put the authentication or the authorization for the webhook channel call. Now coming to the request body, since it is a post call, your request body is mandatory over here. I'm going to define the request body in the JSON format. Now from where do you get the request body? You will get it from the instruction section. Okay, so here if you come down, you can see the request payload. We are using the version 2. You can just come here and look into the payload. I have a simplified payload available. I don't want all those details and all. So I'll just quickly go and copy that payload. I'll share that payload with you all also. So this is a simplified version, but you can have that entire payload copied and used over here. So this is the request that I'm sending. Let us just send this request and see what is the response that is getting generated. So you can see this is the first message coming. So as per the first message, you can see as soon as the connection is established, the conversation starts with hi. Okay, I'm going to just send the request once again to see whether intent qualification is working. Now you can see intent qualification happened and it is asking you what is your account number. So try to understand the difference between the API call and the webhook channel. Here I'm just having a conversation. It is asking me for the account number. Now once I provide an account number over here, we click on send. It will ask me for the amount to be transferred. Okay, so just like from the web channel, I was having a conversation using the chat window. In the same way, from Postman, which is not available as a channel, but using the webhook URL, I'm having a conversation with the virtual assistant as an end user. Okay, so you can see the entire conversation in progress over here. Clear till here? What is the purpose of the webhook channel and how to do the configuration? Any questions on that? Okay. So before we start off discussion with the SDKs, like the web SDK, the BotKit SDK, okay, let's take a break of 20 minutes over here and then continue with the rest of the discussion. I hope all of you all are back from the break. Any questions on anything that we discussed before the break? Okay, so the next configurations that we will look into are the two SDKs that we have, the web SDK and the BotKit SDK. Now for the web SDK, typically this was a mandatory requirement earlier, where any customization in the on the conversation window had to be done through the SDK files. Okay, so today if you want to change the background color of the conversation window, you want to change the text colors, okay, the bubble color of in the conversation window and all, to keep up to your enterprise's color theme, that have to be done through the web SDK files. But as of now, if you look into the configuration of the web mobile client, that is the web channel, you will see lot of customizations are available within the UI itself. So you don't need to as such use the SDK file in this case. So if you click on edit, themes and designs, if you click on edit, you will come to the default templates which are there. And again, you can customize it. You can create a new theme and you can customize the look and feel of your conversation window as per your own requirement. Okay, so the requirement of web SDK has been reduced in that way. And you can see also when you come to the web client details, you get the URL and you get the HTML embed code that you can use to embed this particular virtual assistant within your website. Now, let's say today you are deploying from the core hosted environment. This URL works for the for this particular domain only. But if you have your own deployment and from there you want to deploy the virtual assistant in the web channel, you want to do some customizations. Furthermore, the most important, like in the conversation window, you want to enable the chat history. Okay, after deployment, typically before after deployment, you will see chat history is not available. So when the conversation window is loaded, okay, the chat history is not available. One of the reasons behind that is since we are deploying a consumer bot, okay, that is any user can connect and have a conversation after deployment. The chat history is not stored in that way because the virtual assistant cannot recognize a returning user. Okay, every time a user connects, a new ID is assigned to that user. The ID exists as long as the session is in progress. As soon as you close your conversation window and open again, or you open the conversation window in a different tab, you are taken as a new user. So there's no identity through which the virtual assistant can identify a returning user, due to which chat history by default is not available. But even for an enterprise user, you will see after deployment, chat history is not displayed, because by default for the web channel, chat history is disabled. So let's say we want to enable chat history, or we want the virtual assistant to track the browser location, and that location should be used in the conversations that are taking place. So things like this, or you want to enable the speech to text, engines and all. So those kind of configurations, if you want to do within your conversation window for the web channel, we have the web SDK. So the first thing, when you want to do those customizations using the web SDK, to download the web SDK, you have to go to course GitHub. So here, when you are coming to app settings, and under that you have the dev tools, this is where you have the web mobile SDK. Click here and you can see the link to the GitHub to download the web SDK. Now, once you download the web SDK, it will download a zip file within your local system. And once you extract the content of the zip file, it will create a folder called SDK app. And inside that, you will have all the configuration files related to the web SDK channel. Here you have the SDK folder, which is very important. And under the SDK folder, you have a folder called UI. This is where you get the actual configuration files. Like today, you want to change the look and feel of the conversation window. You have limited options available within the configuration of your virtual assistant from the web channel. You want further controls, further assistance, further configurations on that. You can come to the CSS file, and within the CSS file, you can also make the changes. So if you open this particular chat window.css file, you will get to see all the configurations, the color codes and all, and you can make these changes as per your requirement. So many developers like to do it through the CSS files instead of the limited access that you have within the configuration of the virtual assistant. You can do it from here, and you can upload images and all as the image within your chat window. So these are all available within the SDK. But once you have done these CSS file configurations and all, how do you deploy the virtual assistant using the web SDK? So here we are going to open the core config.js file. Okay, this is where we will put the details of the virtual assistant that will be deployed. So open this file with text edit, and here you can see the first is the URL of the server where the XO11 platform is available. You can see platform.co.ai over here. The next is the email ID of the developer who is doing this particular deployment. I have put this thing over here. You will need generation of JWT. So we will use Node.js to generate JWT. So wherever Node.js is running, the URL of the server where Node.js is running, if it is running on your local host, this is how you refer to it. Okay, these are default codes. You can just customize it as per your requirement. And now in the bot info section, you need to put the name of your virtual assistant, the ID of the virtual assistant. And here you have to, under bot options, you need to put the client ID and the client secret, which will be used to generate the JWT. So these are primary information that you need to provide. Going down, you can see the chat configurations. Okay, so here you can see if text to speech, if you want to enable, by default it is disabled, you can enable it. If you want the send button to be enabled in the conversation window, okay, typically we type in and we press enter, but if you want a send button, you can enable the send button. Okay. If you want Google Speech is automatically enabled, but if you don't want to use Google Speech, you can disable it. If you want to track location of the browser from where the user is connecting, you can enable that. If you want to load, 1 second, if you want to load chat history, okay, you can see chat history is disabled. The purpose is we typically deploy consumer bots, okay, but we want to, if it is an enterprise bot that is getting deployed, and when an user is connecting, if our platform can identify the end user and you want to load the previous conversation for reference of the end user, you can enable the chat history and how many messages you would like to load in the conversation window if chat history is enabled. So these kind of additional configurations, you can do it from the web SDK files, which is not available directly within the configuration of the web channel in your application that you are building. Yeah, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, still not clear to me when we were using the web SDK. Is just for the integration with, let's say,
This is for
giving.
the, yeah, this is for the customization of the web channel. Okay, typically when you are just deploying on the web channel, you can see a conversation window coming up, and we allow certain level of customization from within the configuration of the virtual assistant, like the background color, the foreground color, the color of the text, and all those things. But if you want additional configurations within your chat window, like you want to track the location from where the user is connecting, you want to load the chat history for the enterprise users, okay? You want to enable text to speech or speech to text engine should be enabled and all. You want to enable the send button in your chat window. So these kind of additional features, if you want to enable within your chat window, that is the time you will need the web SDK. These additional configurations are directly not available within your channel configuration. So if you come to the web channel configuration, 1 second. If you come to the web channel configuration, you do not have all of those controls over here. The maximum that you can do is you can change the color theme, the backend color, okay, the foreground color, the color of the message, and so on. That is the maximum customization that is available. But for further customizations and all, you have to go ahead with the web SDK files. Okay, and that is for additional customizations if the users want, if the developers want. If that is not required, you don't need the web SDK in that case. Clear till here?
Yes, another point about the integration with web channels. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you want to integrating with Facebook or Instagram or any other tools, is this clear in the documentation how you can do this one from Core AI integrated, let's say, with Facebook, or Core AI integrated with Microsoft Dynamics?
See, for that, if you are doing an integration for a channel, okay, that is, you are going to talk to the virtual assistant as an end user from Facebook Messenger and all,
Okay.
then you will see under digital channels, you have Microsoft Teams, you will have Facebook also, Facebook Messenger and all. So you have Skype, you have Telegram. So you just come to this particular channel, you look into the instructions over here, you go to the configuration part. And remember, a channel configuration does not mean only enabling the channel from the virtual assistant side. You also have to put the virtual assistant related information on the channel side also. Okay, so there are certain information that you need to pick up from the channel side, put it over here. And similarly, this webhook URLs and that all that is provided over here, this you need to put in Facebook Messenger to enable this particular virtual assistant within your Messenger. Okay, so you will get all of these instructions available here. If there is an application which is not available as a channel, okay, you don't see
Mhm.
that in the list of channels, then you go in for the webhook channel integration that I have discussed just before the break. But if it is just the web channel that you are enabling, but you want further customization on the conversation window that you see, that is the time you will need the web SDK files. Otherwise, you don't need it. Clear till here?
Okay, so you will need the SDK files if you want to do a more customization, or there's no, you don't find the channel, one of the channels that you are already working with integrated with Core AI, right? This what I try to understand, right?
Those SDK file is only for the web channel, okay, not for the other channels which are available here. Okay, so
Okay.
it will work only for the web channel enablement. Okay.
And this is apply for the voice one, or this only apply for the?
Anywhere. If you are enabling voice, over here, of course, the voice input will be changed to text and then it will be relayed. It is not the voice channels that we are talking about. It is just in the conversation window, you will get that voice button coming up so that you can speak and your browser can understand your input and it changes to text and sends it to the virtual assistant. But if you want to make a call from your mobile and you want to connect and all, that is the time you have to enable the voice gateways where we have the core supported voice gateway, or you can also do integration with third-party voice gateways. But both of these are paid features and in your standard workspaces, that is not available. You have to upgrade to an enterprise workspace in order to use these voice channels. So if you are using mobile phones and all to connect, to make a call and connect, then you have to go in for the voice channel integration. Okay.
Okay. There's a specific training for this one, or
Sorry,
for
I didn't
using?
get your question.
There is a training for the voice gateways and this one.
I will just demonstrate, give you an overview of enabling the core voice gateway today. But again, for the third-party voice gateway and all, you can always look into our documentation for the details. So you can click here. You can see it is a pro feature right now, but I'll show it to you all from my enterprise workspace. What are the other voice channels that you can enable? And then you can refer to the documentation to look into the steps of configuring those channels. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Now coming to the Web SDK integration, I'm just going to pick up the details from here. So the name of the virtual assistant, remember wherever you need to specify the name of the virtual assistant, it is very case sensitive. So make sure you copy the name and you put it over here. Similarly, we will pick up the ID of the virtual assistant, and here in the ID section, we are going to put this. Okay, I'm not doing any customization over here. I don't think the ID got copied. 1 second. Okay, so I'm not doing any customization, but if you're doing customizations and then deploying it from here, you will get to see the conversation window coming up in that way. Okay, now going ahead, the client ID and the client secret. So we are going to copy the client ID. Let's put it over here. And the client secret that we have, let's copy that and we will put it here. Now, once you have provided all these details, let's save this file. And furthermore, if you want to do any of these chat configurations, you can go ahead and do the configurations as per your requirement. Okay. You can go through all this information that is available over here. You want the date picker to be enabled. That is, it will show you the calendar and all within the conversation window. So all of those type of customizations can be done within the Web SDK file. Now, once you have enabled, disabled the configurations as per your requirement, you just save it here. And now how do you further go ahead with this? So before you can connect, so first we have deployed the virtual assistant on the web channel. Then you download the Web SDK from GitHub, then go to the web channel, pick up the JWT details and all, put it in the core config.js file. Additionally, you have the CSS files available to do customization of the chat window, look and feel of the chat window. The features that you would like to enable within the chat window, it is also available within core config.js file. You can do that also. And then After that, once all the configurations and everything is done, before you connect to the virtual assistant directly from the browser, now what we will do is we will start Node.js to generate the JWT. Okay, so here I'm going to just start Node.js. Okay, this is my local server where I'm starting Node.js. Okay, and I have reference to the local server within my web SDK file also for generating the JWT. So we'll come over here and we will put localhost. So if you look into this particular file, you will see Node.js is running on localhost and the port number is 3000. So the same thing I'm putting over here, okay, to connect to the virtual assistant. You can see the name of the virtual assistant coming up. When you click on that, it will open the conversation window for you. So now here, if you have done any customization, the look and feel of the conversation window will be as per the customization that you have done. Okay. And you can see press enter to save. So if I enable that save but send button, you will get to see the send button coming up and you can click on that to send the user response to the virtual assistant. Okay. So now here, if I say check bank balance, you will see the conversation continuing as per the configuration that we have done. Okay, so this is the customized channel, conversation window that you are getting to see. Further customization with proper labels, proper colors, send button, and the bubbles of the responses and all. You can do all of those customizations from the CSS file. So you get a blank conversation window coming up. Customizations that you have done in the CSS file will be applicable within this conversation window. And you can pick up the index.json file. 1 second, let me just show it to you all. So here you will have this index.html file, which will have the reference of this particular virtual assistant. So if you would like to enable the virtual assistant within your website, okay, this entire SDK, this web SDK has to be downloaded within the folder from where you have the configuration files of your website. So if your organization's website deployment files are in a particular location, you have to have all of these files, all of these configurations available in the same location so that the deployment takes place from that particular site into your website of the organization with all the customizations that you have done. Clear till here? Okay, I'll be sharing all the steps that I have discussed. I'll be sharing the documentation with you all also, where step by step it is given how you can do it, how you can work with the index.html file to invoke the virtual assistant within your website, the customized conversation window within your organization's website. All of those are given over there. You can follow those steps to do the integration. Okay. So this is one of the SDKs that are supported within our platform. The other SDK, which is the BotKit SDK, it is supported for integration with external applications, which will be used in the conversations that will take place. Now, earlier, any external integration, like today you want to integrate with Jira or with Zendex and so on, any external integration had to be done through the BotKit. But as of now, you will see if you come to the app settings section, you have a lot of pre-built integrations available. So when you come to this integration section, you can see all these integrations are available to you. All you need to do is go to a required integration and follow the instructions, do the authorization to use this particular integration. Now, when you are doing the authorization, there are two ways of authorization. One is pre-authorization. One is allow the user to authorize the integration. Now, what is the difference between the two? Okay, it can be, this is the same process for any integration that you are enabling. Now, Once the integration is enabled, you will be using this integration within your dialog tasks to drive the conversation. Like today, let's say I'm integrating with Jira, and then I have a dialog task where I'll put a support ticket ID, and I want to fetch all the details related to that ticket from Jira. Okay, something like that. So that is the purpose of using the integrations with enterprise system server. Now, today you are a developer, you put your authentication in order to authorize this particular integration, and using that authentication, when this integration is used in a particular dialog task, the conversation is triggered. But once you deploy the virtual assistant, and let's say a co-employee of yours is using that particular task to fetch a ticket related details from Jira, you don't want that employee to use your authentication to connect to Jira. That should not be allowed. So these kind of integrations when you are doing, and this integration is used in a particular dialog task, when an end user is using that dialog task in which this integration has been utilized, you would like to ask the end user for his access credentials and use those credentials to authorize the integration and continue with the dialog. So if that is the scenario, you say allow users to authorize the integration. So wherever you are utilizing this integration in the dialog tasks, you will see when the task is initiated, the first thing, the virtual assistant will prompt the user for his access credentials, and using that credential, the integration will be internally authorized. And if it is authorized successfully, then only the conversation will continue. On the other hand, if you have this pre-authorized integration enabled, then after deployment also, for end user connection, your authorization will be used. So be careful about it whenever you are enabling any of these integrations which you are going to use in your dialog tasks. Remember to make sure you enable end user in authorization. Otherwise, your authorization, the pre-authorization, will be used whenever end users are initiating the dialogues. Clear till here? Okay. And you can see a lot of pre-built integrations are available. Like for agent transfer, we support all of these applications, and you can enable all of any one of these. External NLU, instead of using the core NLP engines, if you want to use some external NLP engine for intent qualification, that also can be done. Many organizations have that requirement. They don't want to train our ML engine, KG engine for intent qualification. They want to use an external NLP engine for intent qualification. The qualified intent should be sent to our virtual assistant, and the conversation will be taking place from here because the dialog task configurations and all are done within our automation AI application. But the intent qualification part will be handled externally by some other NLP engine. So here you can see we already have support for Dialogflow. Okay, you can integrate with Dialogflow for intent qualification. But today, if you want to integrate with some other external NLU engine, okay, for intent qualification, that is as of yet not available. Then how do you do these kind of integrations? This is where the bot kit will come into play. So bot kit is an intermediate layer. Once enabled, bot kit is an intermediate layer between the user and the virtual assistant. So when an input comes from the user, if bot kit is enabled, it will first come to the bot kit. From there, if you want to redirect the user's response to some other external application, you can do that. The response received from that external application will come back to the botkit. And from the botkit, if you want to send this response now to our virtual assistant, you can push it to the virtual assistant. Again, any response generated by the virtual assistant will first come to the botkit, and from there, it will go to the end user. So lot of complex configurations where you are doing integration with external applications, which is not available out of the box in the integration section, it can be done using the bot-kit layer. So one of the common examples is integrating with agent transfer systems. That is one of the thing. If you are not using our core contact center and all. The second is integration with external NLP engines for intent qualification, where the conversation will be driven from within our automation AI app. There you can use BotKit. The third very common implementation of the BotKit is you will see our service calls have a particular timeout. So wherever you are defining a service node, if you come to the check bank balance task where we have a service call, you will see the default timeout is 20 seconds. So within 20 seconds, if your service call is not responding, the task will be terminated. Okay. So if you come here, you go to the instance properties of this particular node, you can see the timeout. And if it fails to respond back within 20 seconds, if the service call fails to respond in 20 seconds, what will happen? The task will be discarded and task execution failure event will be triggered. Now, what happens when the task execution failure event is triggered? You can always go to the events section and check it out. So here, if you come to the conversation events section, you can see the task execution failure event. Okay. And here you will see we have a predefined message. I'm sorry, something went wrong and I had to discard the your task. Please retry. So with this message, the conversation comes to an end. You can increase the timeout for a service call up to 1 minute. But there can be service calls which take more than 1 minute to respond back. Okay. So here, if you come back, if you want to increase the time, you will see max that we allow is still 60 seconds. That is 1 minute. Beyond that, if an API call takes to respond, you cannot use the service node. Then what do? You can have API calls that take more than a minute to respond back. That is where we use the webhook node. So when you add the webhook node, it is basically used for service calls or API calls, which take then more than a minute to respond. And for using the webhook node, you need the BotKit SDK. Okay, so it's a very complex configuration. Okay, but that is one of the very common implementations of the BotKit, where your API calls which you are using in your conversation is taking more than a minute to respond, and you want to use the webhook node for those kind of integrations. And for the webhook node, you will need the BotKit SDK. So there are specific scenarios where the BotKit SDK becomes mandatory. Clear till here? Okay. So now what I will show you all in this thing is, as a developer, you should know how to use the BotKit. Of course, the scenarios, the implementations can be very complex. These implementations need lot of JavaScript knowledge also. So I'm not going to go into that detail right now, but I'll show you all how to use the BotKit using a very simple example where from within the BotKit, we are going to handle the messages that are coming from the user or the responses that are getting generated by the virtual assistant. So let's say a scenario where you have a configuration already, but the user says something for which the NLP has not been trained. So here by default, what happens? Intent qualification fails, the fallback task is initiated, and the response that is presented is, sorry, I did not understand that. Can you please rephrase? But let's say today you have the BotKit enabled for this virtual assistant for some other integrations and all, and you want to change this user response into something that the NLP of the virtual assistant understands, so that there is no failure in intent qualification. So without the BotKit, you cannot do that. Today, if I'm saying something and before it comes to the NLP engine, you want to change it to something else, that is not allowed. These kind of, tweaking the user's response and all can be done from within the botkit layer. So how do we use the botkit? There are a few prerequisites for the botkit. That is, you will need a callback server. I'm using ngrok as the callback server over here, but you can use any other application as a callback server. It is through the callback server that the botkit will connect to your virtual assistant. Okay. Again, you will need Node.js to generate the JWT. So these are two things that will be required. Now let's see how we can enable the botkit. So before we go ahead and enable the botkit, make sure you start ngrok, okay, which is the callback server, or if you want to use any other application, you can use that also. So once ngrok, in my case, I'm using ngrok. Once ngrok is started, you get a HTTPS forwarding URL. We will use this particular URL within the botkit enablement in our virtual assistant, so that from the virtual assistant connects to the botkit using ngrok. Okay, so that is how the connection is established. So now what I will do is I will come to the app settings. Okay, and here under dev tools, we have the botkit. So it is an SDK. There are a lot of related files where we'll be doing the configuration. So the first thing is that you should be downloading the botkit SDK. Okay. Now this is a type mistake in the UI. It is showing web SDK, but it should be the botkit SDK downloaded. The next thing is we are going to generate the JWT. That is the client ID and secret that will be required to generate the JWT. So I'm creating an JWT app. Let's say we name it as botkit app. You can put any name over there. The signing algorithm will be HS256. Okay, everywhere, wherever you need a client ID and secret, the signing algorithm should be HS256. Once you get to see the client ID and secret over here, click on done, and you will get to see the details coming up. Okay, so these are the details that you have. Now here you need to put the callback URL. This is the HTTPS forwarding URL that I have copied from ngrok. So start your callback server, copy that particular URL, and you put it over here. Now once botkit is enabled for this virtual assistant, any event that happens within the virtual assistant will trigger a parallel event within the botkit. Like let's say the user sends a message. Now the botkit will sit between the user and the virtual assistant. So when an user sends a message, it will first come to the botkit, and within the botkit, the event that will be qualified is the on message event. Similarly, when a response is generated by the virtual assistant, it will first go to the botkit, and from there it will go to the end user. And it is the same event that will be qualified within the botkit. So here you can do a lot of customizations on what will be presented to the user or what message will be sent to the virtual assistant. You can make changes in the original message and send it either to the user or to the virtual assistant. Similarly, if you have added a webhook node within your dialog task where you have a service call which is taking more than a minute to respond. So when that node comes into the context within the botkit, the event that is qualified is the on hook node event. So once this event is qualified, the integration that you have done from botkit to the external application to fetch information, that will be executed. On event is an event that is qualified within the botkit whenever a dialog task comes to an end or the response of an FAQ is presented in the conversation window. On alert, if you have alert tasks and if an alert task is qualified, then within the botkit, on alert event will be executed. And whenever you are publishing your bot configurations after you enable a botget, within the botget layer, the event that will be qualified is the on variable update. And on these events, we are going to do configurations within the botget. So I'm going to work with the messages that are exchanged between the virtual assistant and the end user. So I enable the monitoring of the on message event within the botget. Clear till here? Okay. Let us click on save here and you can see subscribed successfully. Now, once that is done and you have downloaded the botget SDK from the GitHub, the files that will be downloaded are, so first you will get a zip file downloaded, and once you extract the content, it will create a folder, and within this folder, the files that you get are these. These are all configuration files. These are different examples of how you can do these integrations. So if you go through these files, you will see book a cab sync is actually a synchronous webhook call. Okay. Similarly, you will have an asynchronous webhook call example also. This is again a webhook synchronous call. So you can look into these JavaScript files and see how the coding has been done. I'll show you all an example with another file that is a simple conversational bot.js. So this is where we are going to do we are going to make changes in the messages that are exchanged between the virtual assistant and the end user. I'll quickly open the required files and then we will do it. The next file that I'll open, there are two files which are mandatory where you have to put the details of the virtual assistant. One is the app.js file. I'm opening that file. And the second is the config.js file. The rest of the files are actually different examples of implementation of botget. If you are interested in learning more about it, you can go through these different examples. Okay, and you have the documentation support also on how to work with external NLP engines and all, how to do those integrations and all. And you can see example files also over here. External NLP config, example with external NLP engine. So you can go through these files to see how these integrations are done. Okay, this is a very complex configuration where we are integrating with external NLP engines to do the intent qualification. And then the qualified intent is sent to our virtual assistant to drive the conversation. So implementation details are available, which you can customize as per your requirement. Clear till here? Okay. So let's go to each of these files one by one. I'm opening the simple conversational bot.js. Within any of the file that you open, from where you can do the configuration, the first two inputs that are required is the ID of the virtual assistant and the name of your virtual assistant. So from where the botget has been enabled. So we'll come here. The ID of the virtual assistant is the app ID. So copy it. Come back here and put it. You will see in any file, these are the first two requirements that are there. Okay. Now, name of the virtual assistant is the JWT app name that you're getting to see. Just come here and put it. And this name is always very case sensitive. So make sure you copy it and put it. Now, once you have provided these details, if you scroll down here, you will see the different events that will qualify. On user message, on bot message. On user message is an event that will qualify when the botget receives an input from the user. On bot message is a event that will qualify when a virtual assistant response is received by the botget, which needs to be sent to the end user. Now, if you want to make changes, okay, like let's say today the conversation starts with, "Hi, how can I help you?" And the expected response of the user is the user will say something which will lead to the qualification of an intent. Okay, maybe a dialog task or an FAQ or a small talk, or maybe some information from the search document, something like that. But let's say the user suddenly says, "I do not need any help." Okay, when the bot is saying, "Hi, how can I help you?" the user says, "I do not need any help." Now, this is not an expected input from the user. Immediately, intent qualification fails. By default, this is just an example, okay? Intent qualification fails, and the response that is presented is, sorry, I could not understand that. Can you please rephrase? Now, if you want to handle this very graciously, the user said, connected to a virtual assistant of the banking domain, and then the user says, I do not need any help, then why did the user connect? So you need to understand what went wrong over here. Okay. So how do you do that? Now, the only way you have in the traditional way is you train the NLP engine to qualify a dialog task with this particular utterance. And then within that dialog task, you can ask the user or you can present a proper response back to the user. That is if you don't have the botkit. But let's say for some other integrations and all, you have the botkit enabled for your virtual assistant, you can very easily handle this particular user's input from the botkit. So here what I'm doing, see, on user message. So when a message is received from the user, I'm checking if the user is saying something like this. Then what I'm doing is I'm rephrasing this particular response, like, sorry to hear that. Let me know if you have banking related tasks or queries. Now, this is just a sample example that I have picked up. Okay. So this is a response that I frame up. Instead of saying, I could not understand that, can you please rephrase? I have a better way of telling the user that, okay, I understand you say you do not need any help, but let me know if you have any banking related tasks or queries. So I frame up a response that will be presented to the user and using a method that is supported within botkit. That is the send user message method. Okay, I send this response back to the user. So see the way I'm handling it. I'm not sending it to the NLP of my virtual assistant because NLP is not trained for this. But in the botkit itself, I'm checking what the user is saying. And if it is something that I have not trained the NLP with, I handle that within the botkit itself. And I send the response back to the user. Okay. So this is how you can work with the botkit. And these methods that you can see, send user message, send bot message, which is a method that is used to send a response from the botkit to the virtual assistant. These methods are available within the downloaded SDK. And if you are writing your own JavaScript to do integrations with external applications, you are using that particular JavaScript within the botkit, then you can utilize these methods within your JavaScript also. Okay, so you can see here on agent transfer, okay, on event. When is this qualified? This on event is qualified whenever a dialog task comes to an end or an FAQ response is presented. So you can see all of those events that we are monitoring available here. If you want to do something, some customization within the botkit, you can define your JavaScript to handle that particular customization. Clear till here? Okay.
So Jayanti, I have a small question.
Mm-hmm.
So if I tell I am sad or I'm unhappy, I'm
Mm.
frustrated. So
Mhm.
which kind the it will take for sentiment analysis or this botkit analysis? How this
See,
thinking and
if you are not checking what is the user response, doing some customization and all, the user, whatever the user is saying will directly come, like through the botkit, it will be sent to the virtual assistant. Now, within the virtual assistant, if you are having sentiment events to handle that particular utterance, it will continue with the conversation as it is. I'll show it to you. Okay, we will see the execution of this. Your question will be answered. Okay.
thank you.
Now coming to the config.json file, this is where we will put the details which will be used to generate the JWT by Node.js. Okay, so first is the URL of the callback server URL. So we will just copy this from here and we will put it here. Okay. Next is the app ID, which is the client ID that we have. So let's copy the client ID. So app ID is the client ID. API key is the client secret. Okay. So we will we'll copy the client secret from here, and API key is where we will put the client secret. And this is where you will also get an additional thing called Redis. Redis is required if you are using the webhook node. Okay, so these are all integrations that are required. It's available in the documentation, and also we have implementation teams. If your organization is interested in these kind of implementations, you can get in touch with our expert services team to help you out. But whatever, let us understand. So now once you have done that, if you have written your own JavaScript to do any external integrations, you have to include that particular file within app.js file. So that file has to be present within the Botkit SDK. Okay, and that file has to be registered within app.js. Now, I have not written any additional file. I have customized one of the files which is already available. That is simple conversational bot.js. So I don't need to make any changes in app.js file. Once you have provided all of these details, okay, now what we will do is we will start Node.js. Okay, so 1 second. So when you are starting Node.js, you put node app.js because app.js has linked to all the files which will be required for this integration. And you can see Node.js has started and it is listening at port 8003. Now, once that is done, we will click on the test button to start the conversation. If you see the welcome messages coming up, you can understand that your Botkit integration is working. If you don't see these welcome messages coming up, that means something has gone wrong. You have to go back and change those configuration files. Okay, I'll just come back here. What is the message that I have provided? I'll just copy it to show you all how it is working. So when it is saying, how can I help you? Here I say, I do not need any help. Now see over here. User input, I do not need any help, is sent to the Botkit. Now, in the Botkit, I have checked if the user's response is something like this. I have defined a response over there. Sorry to hear that. Let me know if you have any banking related tasks and queries. And the next thing that I have done is I've said use the send user message method to send back this message to the user. So you can see the rephrased message now coming back in the conversation window, but from where it is coming back? It is coming back from the Botkit. If you come to the NL analysis tab, our NLP engines did not do any work because our NLP engines did not receive any input from the user as of now. That it will start processing it. NLP engines will start working only when it receives an input from the user. But in the conversation window, what I can see over here, for this particular user input, this response is generated from the Botkit, not by the NLP of our virtual assistant. On the other hand, if I say something like this, check bank balance, it will of course come to the Botkit first. Okay, but from the Botkit, now you can see user input check bank balance sent to the Botkit. Input check my bank balance is received from the Botkit. Now, who is receiving this from the Botkit? The NLP of our virtual assistant is receiving this input from the Botkit. And once the NLP engine receives that input from the Botkit, it processes that input. And now intent qualification takes place and you can see the conversation is in progress. So in this way, since the Botkit, as you can see, is sitting between the user and the virtual assistant, every user response will first come to the Botkit. From there, it will come to the virtual assistant. And in the same way, every virtual assistant response will actually go to the Botkit first, and from there, it will go to the end user. So if you want to make any changes in any of these response that is getting generated, without touching the configuration of the virtual assistant, you can always do that from the bot kit. So here you can see there is a method called onBot message. This event will be qualified when the bot kit receives a message from the virtual assistant. Here you can check what response has been generated by the virtual assistant. You can change that to something else that you want to display to the user, and then use the method send user message and followed by the rephrased response. So this way you can utilize the bot kit to make changes in the responses that are coming from the user or the responses that are generated by the virtual assistant without touching the configuration of the virtual assistant. Whatever configuration is there, that is there. I'm not adding a dialog task to display this response. I did it from within the bot kit. Clear till here? Similarly, let's say, see, this can be handled, but there can be certain integral like the webhook channel and all, webhook node and all, you cannot do it from within this thing. Okay. That is why I said initially that just for that message part, you don't need to use the bot kit. But today, if you have the bot kit available for some external integrations where you have API calls which are taking more than a minute to respond. So you have the webhook node added where you have to use the bot kit, or your organization has its own in-house NLP engine. That is a very common scenario with many organizations. The enterprise have their own NLP engine, which has been trained with utterances to qualify intents. But the intent after qualification, the conversation has been created within core platform. But a particular enterprise does not want to retrain our ML engine and all with the utterances which will lead to the qualification of that intent, because they have their in-house NLP engine and they have trained it thoroughly. How do you do that kind of an integration where the input coming from the user will go to their in-house NLP engine? The intent qualification will take place. The qualified intent will come back to the virtual assistant that we have built, and the conversation will be managed from within the virtual assistant. That is where the bot kit will come into play. Or if you have the bot kit installed for these kind of things, and there is an input coming from the user for which our NLP is not trained. Now try to understand, for that single message, if you want to handle it internally, you have to create a dialog task. You have to add a message node. You have to train the ML engine with that particular utterance to qualify the dialog task. If you have the bot kit enabled for some other implementation, from within the bot kit, without touching the configuration of the virtual assistant, you are handling that scenario. Or let's say, today you have the raise issue task and you have the bot kit enabled for this particular bot. Now, when the user is saying, I do not need any help, you want the raise issue task to be qualified so that you can ask the user what went wrong. Okay, how do you do that? One way is you train the raise issue task. But I don't want the raise issue task to be trained because it is used for sentiment events and all. So what we will do here is, we will come here. Okay, what is the name of my task? Let me just check it out. Raise issue. Okay, so in simple conversational bot, when the user is saying, I do not need any help, I will change it to something that our virtual assistant can understand. I will say raise issue. And instead of sending this response back to the user, I will send this response, this rephrased response to the virtual assistant. So now what will happen is, you will see here, I'll just start Node.js once again because we have made some changes. And let's go back and talk to the virtual assistant. Now see here, user input I do not need any help is sent to the botket. But what is the NLP engine getting for intent qualification? NLP engine is getting the input as raise issue. So where is this change taking place? We are receiving something from the user, but we are changing it to something that our NLP engine has been trained with within the botket and then sending it to the virtual assistant. It's a very common approach taken by the developers who have a very good configuration, working configuration, but they don't want to make any changes in that configuration. But repeatedly, they can see certain inputs coming from the user due to which failures are happening. So instead of creating additional tasks and all to handle it or training the NLP engine further, what they do is if the botket is available for that virtual assistant, they change the user utterance to something that the virtual assistant NLP has been trained with within the botket. And using the botket SDK methods, they send this rephrased input to the virtual assistant for intent qualification. A very common approach taken by the developers at an advanced stage when they have botket for other integrations and they want to handle utterances of the user for which the NLP has not been trained. Clear till here? Okay. And you will see lot many places like this is, I'm again repeating, this is a very advanced configuration. So typically for integration with NLP engines, with agent transfer services, okay, or the webhook node integration and all, those are the scenarios you will get to see the botket. Okay, but remember, if you're not using the botket, okay, if you have enabled for testing it and then you are not using it, make sure you come to the dev tools and from botket you disable the botket. Okay, otherwise it will not work. So what we will do here is you have none, so I'm just going to say no botket is available. Clear till here? Any questions? Okay. We will quickly switch over to the admin console to understand some of the capabilities of the admins of the workspaces. Okay. So if you have created your own workspace, then you have the access to the admin console. So when you click on your profile button, you get to see go to admin console. Click here. Your login credentials will be the same as the automation AI automation product, this thing, login or your platform login. Okay, so once you log into your admin console, just give me a second. I'll just mute it. So the first thing that you get to see is the admin console dashboard over here, where you see the number of bots that has been deployed from your current workspace, the channels on which those virtual assistants are active. Okay, so you can see the two channels. If there are active agent sessions, live agent sessions going on, you will get to see the number of live agent sessions over here. For all the bots that are deployed currently, how many intents were qualified successfully, the total number of users who are connected to the virtual assistant in the last 24 hours. Okay. If there are alert messages sent from the alert task, you will get to see that here. The number of messages and the number of conversation sessions in the depending on the time, you can see it from here. Here it is showing you for all the bots, but if you want to see it for a specific virtual assistant that has been deployed from your workspace, you can click here. It will come up with the list of all your virtual assistants. Select the name of your virtual assistant. It will give you the information for that particular assistant only. Okay, but by default, it will show you the details of all the deployed virtual assistant from your workspace. Coming down here, you will get to see billing information. So if you have an e-commerce bot, so for using that particular virtual assistant, end users need to pay the organization, then the billing details, you can see it from here. And here you can see the number of successful task execution, okay, depending on the time. So you can see it for here for all the bots that has been deployed, number of active users, okay, for the virtual assistants that has been deployed from your current workspace. You can see those details, the tasks that were requested by the user, and the virtual assistants that were used. So currently only one virtual assistant is being used, and these are the tasks that were requested by the user. This part is very important. Many a time we deploy a virtual assistant. Going ahead, we would like to decommission or suspend certain tasks because we think those tasks are not required. So why keep it? We can suspend it. But how do you know whether users are requesting for that task or not? It is not possible for developers to go to the NLP insights and look into the details of the conversation because today we have limited audience, we can see that. But when thousands of users are connecting, finding out how many times a particular task is requested by the end user can be very difficult from the analytics of that virtual assistant. On the other hand, within the admin console, depending on the time frame that you have provided over here, it will show you how many times each task is requested by the user. And it will also show you the name of the virtual assistants to which the users are connecting. So it gives you a very clear detail understanding whether a task is requested by the user, if it is a task which is preferred by the users, if it is a virtual assistant that the users are using, or there are some deployed virtual assistants that users are never connecting to, then you can undeploy those virtual assistants. Okay, you can suspend those virtual assistants. So those kind of decisions you can take on the basis of the report that you get to see over here. Clear? Okay. And you can see the number of active users. Okay, these are the IDs of the users. And you can see the total number of messages that were coming from the user. And if there are any billing sessions and all for the users, you will get to see the billing details coming up over here. That is the dashboard information within the admin console. Coming to the enrollment section, this is where the admin of the platform can invite other co-developers to start using the workspace. One is you can do it from your home page. So if you are the owner of this workspace, you can invite other developers to start using your workspace. Okay, so that they can also build their virtual assistants and you can collaborate between each other by sharing your virtual assistants. But as an admin also, you can invite other developers to start using a workspace. So you can go to the invite option over here, put the email ID of 5 developers at a time and send out the invitations. This will trigger an email, and within that email, there will be a link to access the workspace from where this invite has been sent. You can go in for bulk invite where you can upload a TXT file where each row in that TXT file will contain the email of a developer who has to be invited to this particular workspace. So once you upload the TXT file by clicking on this choose file and uploading it, after uploading, you can send out invitation to all those developers whose email has been provided within this particular file. And the third way is importing the developer profile and sending out the invites. Both the invite and the bulk invite method, they require the developers to register. So they have to first sign up for using the XO platform, and then only they will get access to the workspace that has been shared with them. But as an admin, if you want to create the developer profile and then send out the invitations, then you can go in for the import method. So here you will see you can upload a TXT file or a CSV file, and this is the format of the file where you have the email ID of the developer, the first name and the last name, and the status of that particular developer. Is it a new developer to be added? Are you updating some information about a developer, or you are removing access for a developer? And these are additional optional information that you can provide. So you can create a file like this, upload that file, and once the file is uploaded, then you can send out invitations to those developers to start using the same workspace. Clear till here? Okay. Active Directory sync, okay, with your organization's directory can be done from here by the developers, by the admins of the platform, and you can refer to the documentation to see the steps that are required. Enrollment request. Today, when you are signing up yourself to start using the EXO platform, the request actually comes to the admin of the platform for approval. And now the admin can look into your request and either they can approve it or they can reject it. Okay, so it depends whether from preferences we have said auto approve joining request. That is, whenever an user signs up to use the EXO platform for a given workspace, the request is auto approved. Okay, and they get access to that particular workspace. Or you have do not auto approve, like I have it over here. So anybody who wants to access my workspace, the request will come to me first for approval, because I am the admin of this particular workspace, and only if I approve it, they will get access to my workspace. If I do not approve it, the access will not be provided. Clear till here? Okay. And if you are getting access to a workspace, then what are the privileges that are given to you? You can access automation AI. Okay, so this is reference to our EXO 10 platform. So you can start building virtual assistants. Okay, and if it is an enterprise workspace, then you can create data tables and use those data tables within the virtual assistants that you are building. Okay. Coming to user management over here, you can see the list of all the users who have access to my workspace. And if you would like to see, if that particular user, how many sessions the user had. Okay, so you can see all of these sessions over here, the virtual assistants that they have accessed. Okay, from your workspace, you can see all of those details over here. If you come to profile, you can see the profile details of that particular developer who is sharing your workspace. What information will be stored of your co-developers within this particular workspace? As an admin, you can set it up from here. If you want to create functional groups of developers, so that when you are sharing an app, instead of sharing the app with individual developers, you can share the app with groups of developers. Okay. So when you come to user management over here, you will see either you can share your app with individual developers, okay, or you can share your app with group of developers. Now, from where will you create this group of developers, which are basically functional group of developers? You can create it from the admin console. So if you have a list of developers and you want to create a group for them, then give a name. Okay, let's see. And then go to members. You will see the list of all the users available within this particular workspace. Now select the people that you would like to add within this particular group. Okay. And once the group is created, okay, then you have to save the description. Once the group is created, going ahead, when you are sharing the app, you can share the app with that particular group and you can assign the role. Okay, so this functional group of developers can be created by the admin of the platform. Clear till here? Okay. You have role management here also. Okay, these are new things that are included in Exo10 Automation AI. So you can see the system defined roles, and if you want to create a new role which you will be using when you are sharing the app, you can do it from here. But for the system defined roles and all, okay, if you come here, you can see these are the permissions that are associated, but you cannot make changes to these. Okay, so today, if you have app developer, you can see what are the permissions associated for the app developer role. But if you want to make some changes to that particular role, you cannot do it because these are system defined roles. But as an admin, you can look into all the roles which are there. You can also create new roles. But if you come to a particular role and then you want to make some changes, you can always do it. So admins can make changes to the system defined roles also. Whereas as a owner of an app, you can see the system defined roles and you can create new roles. You cannot make changes in the privileges which are associated with the system defined roles. And admins can also create new roles which can be used by the owners of the app when they are sharing the apps from this particular workspace. Clear till here? Okay. Now let's say today you have deployed a virtual assistant. Okay, so right now, if you come to the published state of my virtual assistant, you will see all the tasks that are there. They are published. Now there's certain task, okay, on which you want to work further. Okay, so there are some updates required in that particular task. So you can see all the tasks are in the published state. Today, if you want to make any changes in a particular task, when you click on it, it will ask you, do you want to upgrade the task? If you click on upgrade, then this task will have two versions. One version will be the published version to which end users are talking. And one will be the in development version where the developers are making the change. Now, this new configuration will be updating the earlier published version only when you go ahead and deploy the virtual assistant after making the changes. So in general, whenever you publish a configuration and going ahead, you're making changes, in that case, there will be one published configuration to which the end users are connecting, and there will be an in development configuration. This in development changes will be updating the published configurations only when you go ahead with the deployment of the changes. Okay. That is the general scenario. But today, I have this particular task which is already published, and now I'm going to make some changes in this configuration. And I want that as I'm making the changes, this task should be inaccessible to the end users. End users should not be able to access this task because right now I'm making changes to the configuration of that particular task. Only after I make the changes, I'm going to deploy the configuration. Then this task should be again available to the end users. How do we do it? So in that case, we need to suspend the task. A suspended task cannot be accessed by the end users. So we suspend the task, then we make changes, and then we deploy it back once again so that end users can start using that particular task. So how do you suspend a task? Only the admin of the platform can suspend a task. So when you come to bot management, come to consumer bots. Okay, you will get to see the name of your virtual assistant over here. Click on it. Okay, go to manage bot tasks. Okay, you can see all of these tasks are active. That means these tasks are in the published state. Okay, now scroll down to the task which you would like to suspend, deselect it, and click on confirm. Once you confirm this, you will see the status has been changed. So now if you come back here and you refresh your screen once, you will see this task has been suspended. So now this task is no longer available from the conversation windows of the end users. If you want to make changes in the configuration of this task, click here and click on upgrade, which will bring the task back to the in development mode. Make changes to the configuration of the task and publish the configuration once again. So deploy the bot once again so that this task is redeployed back and it is available to the end users. Clear till here? This is a important thing because this can be a common requirement that when a task is getting upgraded, it should not be available to the end users. And the only way to do it is you suspend the task from the admin console, upgrade the task, and then deploy the task back to the end users. Clear till here? Okay. Today, if you are the owner of a particular virtual assistant, you leave the organization and the ownership of the virtual assistant remains with you. Now, as a owner, you can do a lot of things. You can share the app further with others. You can delete that particular app and so on. Okay. Now, since you have left the organization, the ownership of the virtual assistant should be changed to somebody else, to one of your team members. Who can do it? The admin of the platform can do it. So the admin can come here, can click on change bot owner and assign the ownership to some other developer from the team. Okay, so these are certain important things which in real time actually comes into play, and admins can only do this. And the last important thing that the admin can do is that today you can see the conversations, the chat history from the NLP insights, but you cannot download that chat history in PDF format so that you can discuss it with your team. You can see it in the Automation AI app. Within that particular app, you can see it from NLP Insights, but there's no way you can download that entire chat history. If you come to the analytics section over here, you can see bot chat history. If you click here, you can see all the conversations that have taken place. If you click, you get to see the entire conversation over here, and you can download this conversation either in the PDF format or in the CSV format. So this is something only the admin can do. And once you download it, you can use this downloaded conversation to discuss what improvements are required with your team members. Clear till here? Okay, so these are certain things that the admin of the platform can do. Any questions on anything that we have discussed till now? Okay, so quickly we will, before ending the session, I'm just going to log into my enterprise account and show you all how the core voice gateway works. So that is a feature. Voice channels are a feature that is available only with the enterprise accounts. That means your paid accounts. In the standard workspaces, you do not get those channels available. We will have to wait because it takes a little time to connect to the enterprise workspace. Okay. So we will go into this particular virtual assistant. This is the same virtual assistant that I was using in my standard workspace. And here, let's click on test. I'm going in for voice conversation. So you can see this is need to check my bank balance. It's 1001. Can you please confirm? Yes. No. Yes, it's correct. The balance in your account 1000. So you can see a conversation taking place through the voice channel. Okay, and I can also call from my mobile on the number on which it has been deployed and connect to the virtual assistant through the voice channel and have the conversation just the way right now you all heard it. Now, how are we able to do it? So coming to the flows and channels over here, okay, if you come to core voice gateway, I have used core voice gateway, but again, you can use also third-party voice gateways over here, which are supported. So if you come to all, these are the voice gateways which are available, you can use it. I have used core voice gateway over here. So the first thing is you have to buy a phone number. Okay, so I'll just show you all the steps. So when you click on buy a phone number, you can click on get new phone number. These are the list of phone numbers which are provided. These are provided to the developers to test the configuration, but after deployment, either you can use your own support phone number or you can use this phone number, and of course the charges will be implemented and your organization needs to pay core for using this particular phone number for the support purpose. Okay, so you can use one of these phone numbers, click on get phone number. In this way, I have enabled this particular, I have purchased or I am using this particular phone number. Now, if you come here, you can see I'm using this phone number for inbound calls. So when you click on get number, it will ask you for what purpose you want to use that particular phone number. Is it for receiving calls for the end from the end user, or outbound calls are used for campaigns? Now today, lot of service providers have campaigns to promote the new services that they are launching or the promotions that they have and all. And these can be voice promotions also. So these promotions, if they are voice enabled promotions, then you can enable the outbound calls for this particular phone number. I'm not going in for campaign management and all. We are just receiving calls from the end user. So this is an inbound call. Now, once you purchase that particular phone number which you want to use, you have to attach a flow with that, a welcome flow with that. There are welcome flows. If you come to the start flows, there are default flows like the chat flow is there, the voice flow is there. You can use the default flows if you want. What I have done is I have created my own flow, a very simple flow I have created where I have a customized message to welcome the user. And then I ask the user, how can I help you? Okay, and whatever the user says, so you can see here, text to speech, how can I help you? And whatever the user says will be processed by the NLP engine for intent qualification. Okay, so that is a simple configuration that I have. And I have attached that flow to this particular phone number. So you can see this phone number is attached to this particular flow. So how do you do that? When you are buying this phone number, it will ask you to attach a flow. When you click on this, it will come up with the list of welcome flows which are there. Select the one that you would like to use as soon as the user connects on this particular number. Okay, so that is all that I have done. So once this is done, of course, to use the voice channels, you need to deploy your virtual assistant. And after deployment, when you're clicking on the test button over here, if you're testing the flows, when you click here, it will give you the option of voice conversation. Click on this and the conversation will be initiated through the voice channel that you have enabled. It's a very simple configuration when you are using the core supported voice gateway. Clear till here? Now, additional voice preferences, you can set it up from here. Like you have the voice call properties, just come here. So you can see how the call will be terminated. Okay. You can select which task will be initiated to handle the termination of a call. Okay. You can see the timeout prompt over here, how much time the virtual assistant will wait for the response of the user. If the user does not respond back within 5 seconds, it will relay this particular prompt. I'm sorry, looks like there is an issue. Can you try saying that again? If you want, you can customize this as per your requirement. If you want to allow barge in, that is, if a menu is being read out, okay, you don't want the user to wait till the end. Somewhere in between only the user can say, I will proceed with 2. Okay, so something like that. If you are allowing margin, you can enable that over here. The number of retries, if the user response does not match with the expectation, then the number of retries that is allowed, you can set up all of these voice properties. Okay, these are the general voice properties. But again, for a particular dialog task, when it is in execution, for a given node, you always have the voice properties of that node. So today, if you are in the check bank balance task and you want to define a specific response for a given channel, okay, you can define a channel override response over there. Okay, so when you add a new response, you can define the channel for which you are adding that particular response, and whatever response you define here will be used when the user is connecting on that particular channel. So you can see the IVR channels over here. Select the channel and define your response. Okay, so smart assist gateways are supported voice gateway. So today, if I want a different response, I can select this particular channel and define the custom response that will be used for that channel only. Okay, so this applies for any entity node. It applies for the message nodes or the confirmation nodes. Along with that, you also have the IVR properties, and you can set up all the IVR properties which will come into play when the user is connected to the virtual assistant on the voice channel and this task is in execution. So for the prompts and responses, you can define channel override responses. For further customization of the voice properties, you have it at the entity level also, and you can define it from here, from the IVR properties of a given entity. Okay, clear till here? Okay, so these are the voice channel configurations that you can do. Other than that, within an enterprise account, when you are adding FAQs, in standard workspaces, the only training that we can do is we can add alternate questions, but we cannot tag keywords over here. Like today, when I am having certain questions, okay, and there are certain words which are telling you which question should be qualified. So today you have a question like, how do I repay a home loan? Now, they can be similar questions like, how do I apply a home loan? Or the user says, how do I, how do I end my home loan? Something like that. Okay, so there are some related questions for home loan which are very similar. Only one word is changing somewhere, and the response that is generated is totally different. So how do I apply a home loan? How do I repay a home loan? Both of these questions will have a separate response. But the basic format of the question is same, only the words apply and repay are different. Now you want to train the KG engine to understand that when the word repay is present in the utterance of the user, or synonyms of the word repay is present in the utterance of the user, then only this question should qualify. Otherwise, if the word apply is present or synonyms of the word apply is present in the utterance of the user, then the other question should qualify. So what you are doing here is you are marking those keywords which will tell the KG engine which question to qualify with confidence if those words are found anywhere in the utterance of the user. So these kind of tagging can be done using the training of the knowledge graph engine, and this training is only supported within your enterprise workspaces. So when you come to the FAQ section of your enterprise workspace, here you get the manage KG option. This is not available in your standard workspaces. So this will take you to the section where you can tag keywords, you can define synonyms of those tagged words, because in the standard workspaces, if you want to define synonyms of the words which are present in the FAQs, you have to use the bot synonym section. But in the enterprise workspaces, you can tag the words within your FAQ section and define keywords over here only. Okay, so let us go down to the question. Let us see how we can tag a particular word. How do I repay a home loan? Let's click on edit over here. Okay. And just below the question, you can tag a particular word. Okay. Press enter and click on that word and define the importance of that word. So if the presence of that word is important to qualify that question, you can mark that word as a mandatory word. And for that particular word, if you want to define synonyms within KG only, then for the tagged word, you can come to the path level synonyms. And here you can say for repay, let's say payback is a synonym. Okay. Or close is a synonym. And this is a better option of defining synonyms because bought synonym sections, one second. Bought synonym sections are common. It can be used for dialog tasks. It can be used for, the KG section if it is enabled. But when you define synonyms within KG by tagging words, these synonyms cannot be used for the dialog tasks. This can be used only by the KG engine to qualify the FAQs. Okay, so now if you come down to this question, you can see within this question, we have tagged this particular word. And for this word, we have also defined some synonyms. So this kind of additional training where your FAQs can be very similar. One or two words tell you the difference between those FAQs. So when you have thousands of FAQs, there if the FAQs are very similar, you really need to train NLP engine or the KG engine with those words which will clearly tell the KG engine when to qualify which question. And that is where this tagging of words become very important. And then if required, you can define also the synonyms which will be used to qualify this particular question. Okay. This kind of further training can only be done when you have an enterprise account. And within that enterprise account, we provide you with the option of defining tagged words or keywords within the FAQs, defining the importance of those keywords. Like if you say it is mandatory, then only when this word or synonyms of this word is present, then only this question will qualify because it is a mandatory word. And then you can define synonyms of these words if required. Clear till here? Okay. So any questions on anything that we have discussed in this training session? Okay. So tomorrow, by the end of the day, I'll be sharing the recording of the session. Both the days recording I'll be sharing. Along with that, I'll be sharing the assignment also. You need to, the assignment will cover all the major topics that we have discussed, like interruption behavior, sentiment analysis, custom dashboard, your public APIs, the webhook channel, entity amendments. Okay, all of these configurations will be covered in the assignment. You need to do these advanced configurations on the virtual assistant that you have built for your basic training. Once you will get 2 weeks to work on the assignment, and within the assignment, you will see there are certain places where we have mentioned take a screenshot of your conversation window so that we can see how the conversation was taking place at your end. So please take those screenshots and put the screenshots in a PDF file or a Word file and then share it with us for evaluation along with the configuration files of your virtual assistant. If you need an extension beyond 2 weeks, let me know with the reason why you need the extension. Once we evaluate the configurations that you have done, we will certify that you have completed the basic training, the advanced training session. Clear till here? Any questions on that? Okay, so thanks all of y'all for joining this session. And we have a new platform agent platform. If you are interested in learning about autonomous agents, how to build autonomous agents, how to build conversations using, autonomous agents and all, you can register for that particular session as well. Though the platform, it's a new platform, it's not accessible to all developers, but still you can attend the session if you are interested to learn about it. So that going ahead, if your organization is using core agent platform, you have the required knowledge to work on that particular platform. So thanks all of you all for joining this session. Any issues when you are doing the advanced configuration, mail me with supporting screenshot so that I can look into it and get back to you accordingly. So thanks all of you all for joining this session. And if you're registering for agent platform training and all, we will connect back once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.